and here we go.
There's the deluge. Here's ignition.
Roger, roll, Atlantic. Doubling up.
Did it just do a Kerbal?
Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, you know.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, it sure looks like a perfect world.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation.
Equalize.
343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers can fly!
Bingo! Right in the center. Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my god.
Yikes, you bet. Sure. We don't need any more of these.
I quite liked Artemis II. I'm not sure about you, so I think we should do it all over again. And to do that, you need a big orange rocket. And the core stage for said big orange rocket is actively rolling out of the Pegasus barge at the Kennedy Space Center. It arrived yesterday and is making its way to the vehicle assembly building where the full Space Launch System stack will be assembled over the coming months to prepare for Artemis III, which is no longer going to be taking people around the moon, but it is going into low Earth orbit or even high Earth orbit, depends what NASA decides, to test some lunar landers, which is still pretty exciting to rehearse for the big day itself on Artemis IV. My name is Ryan Caton. Thank you very much for joining NSF's live coverage of this core stage rollout this morning. We're going to be live for many hours here because this thing is not going to be rolling out at a super fast speed, so it's going to take a little while to get over to the VAB, but we've got plenty of cameras to show you throughout the morning, maybe even the afternoon. Depends how long it takes. Hopefully not that long, but you never know. Things are looking a little bit different. We'll talk about why things look a little bit different compared to what we've seen for Artemis II and Artemis I. But first of all, good morning to Alex.
Yeah, I guess, getting ready for Artemis 3. I guess you can call this the morning of Artemis 3 because it's getting started. See what I did
Good.
there?
Yeah, very good.
I guess.
Getting things off with a I was going to say with a bang, but we don't want a bang today.
No,
We
no
want no
bangs.
bangs. No bangs. In the field, we have Max, we have Jerry, we have, of course, our ever-reliable 24/7 Space Coast Live cameras, and pushing the buttons for today's stream. Jay Keegan is back, pushing the buttons. Thank you, Jay Keegan. Yeah. I'm sure there's plenty of Artemis questions coming, so do put them in chat, but make sure to tag us at NASASpaceflight or at NSF. That filters out the other chat and brings it into a nice queue for us, and we can put them on the screen and do our best to answer the questions. Plenty of more questions coming in already. We are covering the Artemis III core stage rollout today, but we can talk about all things Artemis. We're just going to hang out and talk about Artemis this morning. I think that's a pretty fun thing to do, and we have a beautiful core stage to watch roll out as well. But Alex, first of all, I did allude to it in the intro. This core stage looks like any other core stage we've ever seen before because a fifth of it is missing. It's already inside the VAB. What's going on with this core stage compared to Artemis 1 and Artemis 2?
Well, one of the big differences is that the end portion there, the aft of this core stage, is technically missing. The one that you see there is actually like a structural test article that they used back when, the initial portions of this program many years ago, right? For structural test testing and whatnot. The actual engine section of this core stage is actually, as you said, in the VAB. The reason why they did this is sort of a departure of what they did on Artemis 1 and 2. And part of the reason for this is because the engine section takes the longest to build, right? It's where you've got all of the major plumbing that goes into the engines. You have the most complex parts of the rocket basically in that engine section, right? The rest is just tanks. Like you see there, that tube at the top, right? And the orange portion, like the engine section sort of structural test article is right there on the left, sort of greenish, right? And then the orange portion, that is the liquid hydrogen tank. It's just a big tank, right? Doesn't have any more complexities other than just a big big tank, basically, right? Then you have the intertank section, right, where they have that separation between the liquid hydrogen and the liquid oxygen tank. We'll see that as it gets rolled out of the Pegasus barge later on. And then on top, you've got the liquid oxygen and also the forward skirt. So you only have 4 of the 5 major sections. And again, the engine section is the most complex. So what they did is they started this core stage with the engine section. The engine section came here to the Kennedy Space Center in December 2022. So basically like a month after Artemis I launched. And so that meant they had a full 3 years to be able to work on that engine section. They've since also moved things around. Initially, it was being processed at the Space Station Payload Processing Facility. Now it was moved into the VAB. They sort of modified High Bay 2, inside the VAB to be able to put together the engine section and the rest of the core stage together. It's also easier to put that specific engine section in vertical orientation. Like the tanks and everything, you can sort of put them horizontally. It's actually even like it sort of saves you time even. They found out very quickly with Artemis 1 that it sort of saves you a few months of processing even. But the engine section there, you can see that picture from NASA of where it is inside that high bay 2. They have like a scaffold, right, around like platforms and everything. And so that is currently inside of that jig, that structure inside high bay 2 in the VAB. And so they're gonna come up. See, that's the full structure. So the core stage will be lowered there. Before that, they're obviously gonna be removing the stand-in sort of old engine section structural test article, and that's gonna be lower there. They're gonna be connecting the core stage to the engine section, and then doing all of the different installations of the plumbing and connecting the tanks to the engines and things like that. The engines will also be installed here as well. It's a specialized jig, so to speak, right? And they did this mostly because of how complex the engine section is. At the VAB, well, yeah, technically at the VAB, they also have the engine section for Core Stage 4, so the one for Artemis 4. And if I'm not mistaken, the engine section for Artemis 5 should be going to the Kennedy Space Center this year as well. So it's getting finished for shipping, if I'm not mistaken, at Michoud, and also should be shipping this year. But this is basically why the difference between the previous 2 core stages and this one. Again, they wanted to concentrate their efforts first on the engine section and then complete the tanks because it takes a lot of work to be able to complete that. So hopefully we get this core stage completed by the end of the year and stacking shortly thereafter. That's probably what we should expect given the Artemis 3 timelines.
Wonderful. First of all, Turtle Sanctuary getting the support kicked off. Thank you for your support this morning. Speaking about Pegasus, they're asking is this what the barge will look like for Booster and Starship? Of course, we recently got the news that Just Read the Instructions is being retired as a drone ship and instead being converted to a Starship transport barge. SpaceX have already used You'll Thank Me Later, which is a barge, to transport some GSE, but they're both going to be used to move Super Heavy boosters and Starship ships from Starbase to the Kennedy Space Center because, they have a massive factory where they build these things in Texas. They don't exactly have the massive factory in Florida, so they need to be able to get the vehicles to Florida somehow. Do you think they'll have some sort of protection shell like Pegasus does, Alex, to stop Starship and Super Heavy from getting more corroded than they already do from all the salty air?
Yeah, so in fact, we already have somewhat of a confirmation through some of the filings. They are setting up a crane at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station to outfit, or at least we think it's going to be first, the Mark-Mac 31 barge, which, also nicknamed or also known as You'll Thank Me Later, right? We think it's going to get like a canopy, like some kind of cover on top, right? So that they can do basically what we see here with Core Stage 3, right? Where they sort of roll in and roll out the vehicles, whether they are boosters or ships, and so that they are protected during the transfer out to out or back from from Starbase. I guess that at some point they might also want to ship them back to Starbase, right? Like, why not? If they need a refurbishment or something different, or they are needed at Starbase, you can think of also doing the trip the other way. But yeah, basically, it's not a new thing for them to do transfers by barge, because Falcon 9 they also use barges at Vandenberg for transferring boosters and fairings from Long Beach in Los Angeles, basically all the way out to Vandenberg. So they have a specialized barge for that, and they do roll-on and roll-off operations, the Ro-Ro barge, basically. So a very similar thing will happen, but with Starship, and of course it's going to be covered just like we see here with SLS, right? It's going to look very similar.
I really do like the look of the core stage coming out, and it's like perfectly shrouded by the Pegasus barge. It's it's just so, the operations are so perfect that it just fits like a glove, slides right in, and just perfectly fits in Pegasus, which of course had to be lengthened after the space shuttle program, because Pegasus originally was used to transport the external tank for the shuttle program.
Yeah.
And the external tank is much shorter than the SLS core stage, so they actually had to kind of, for lack of a better term, chop it in half and make it longer.
Yep. Yeah, they extended it when they moved to SLS, of course, because it's a longer core stage, or rather, the external tank was shorter than the core stage. Yeah.
More questions here. Again, more people are joining us as the morning goes on, so if you do have any questions for us, tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight or at NSF. Let's go to this question. Since Zishan is asking, since Artemis III is no longer landing on the moon, do we know what NASA plans to do on this mission? Alex, yes we do. Would you mind giving us a brief overview on what the new plan is for Artemis III, considering that we are no longer landing on the moon on this mission?
I was actually going to make the joke that this is not a mega moon rocket anymore. It's a mega Earth orbit rocket. Because Artemis 3 is going to Earth orbit, right? Technically, Artemis 2 SLS also launched Orion around Earth, not to the moon. It was Orion, the one that did that work for itself. Only Artemis 1 actually went, like the ICPS put Orion on its way to the moon. But yeah, the Artemis 3 plan is just to test the Orion to lander concept of operations, right? So you launch Orion to an Earth orbit. They still deciding whether it's going to be low Earth orbit or a high Earth orbit, and the reason why they're still deciding it's because it changes things. If you go to low Earth orbit, you probably want to skip using the ICPS, the upper stage, right? Because you don't need that for just low Earth orbit. But if you want to go to a high Earth orbit, then you need the ICPS, the upper stage, to be able to push Orion all the way out there. So that there's that trade-off right now going on. I think they were supposed to do the announcement, or like Lori Glaze, she said that because there was this whole tour that they did to NASA social people a couple of weeks ago, and she said like 2 or 3 weeks from now, so we should be close, like might be in a week or two when we hear that. So yeah, it's gonna be meeting with a lander in that sort of Earth orbit, whether it's low or high Earth orbit. It's gonna be meeting with a lander. We don't know the specifics of what exactly they're gonna be doing, right? Because they highlighted a bunch of things that they want to do, but depending on the readiness of the landers, the readiness of Orion, a bunch of other things, right? They might do one thing or the other, or and so, for example, just to put an example of some of the things that they may want to do are testing the spacesuits while they are inside of the lander, right? Because you want to train and you want to test those suits in the environment that you're going to wear them, because they're going to wear those in those landers before doing the landing, right? And then when they do the landing as well, and they go out to go down to the lunar surface and everything. So they want to test those suits and be able to train and everything. They want to dock to the landers as well, right? Instead of doing it for the first time on the landing mission, they want to dock to the landers. They want to do that sort of operations and things like that. They even said that maybe they're going to be visiting both landers. Like if both landers are ready, the mission may even entail having both landers, right, in orbit. And so we'll see what sort of exact parameters and parts of the mission, like maybe it's docking, but the people don't go inside the lander, for example, or maybe they do go inside of one lander, but they don't go inside of the other. Like, there's so many possibilities here, and they're still trading that off and sort of discussing it, and more decisions will come up in the next few weeks as they nail it down.
Yeah, that mission plan is still technically in
flux.
development. Yeah, they're still actually building the mission plan while they're also building the rocket at the same time. Of course, this part of the core stage now arriving. We've got a couple pieces of the solid rocket boosters which are there as well. We've got parts of the Orion spacecraft which are there. So all starting to come together at the Kennedy Space Center as we prepare for Artemis III. One of those lunar landers is, of course, Starship. We've got a couple more Starship-related questions. It's all relevant because it's all part of the broader Artemis program. But first of all, John is asking, will the Super Heavy Transport Barge be even longer than Pegasus?
It's gonna need to be longer, I think, mainly because the SLS core stage, the SLS core stage is shorter, especially this part of the core stage that gets transported. Because technically, the core stage with the launch vehicle stage adapter, that's the entirety of the thing that separates, right? But the launch vehicle stage adapter, the cone that goes on top, that gets shipped separately. So the barge only needs to be as big as the tanks plus the engine section. And so yeah, Super Heavy is way longer. It's like 10 meters longer than this whole assembly, right? When you take into account the length of the tanks plus the engine section is about, I think, 63, 64 meters. And Super Heavy is already pushing like 73, 74 already. So yeah, you're gonna need slightly longer barge than that.
And along the same lines, we have another question from Jason. They are asking, have we seen any equipment to lay Starship or booster on its side for transport?
There is some that we've seen, at least for transport. I don't recall exactly for like turning over the booster or ship horizontal, but for transport we've seen what appears to be some cradles of sorts, right? Like to be able to be part of the transport at Starbase, but not a huge lot. Like, we are starting to see that hardware arriving and slowly arriving. Like, for many weeks it's been sort of like a trickle, right? And we'll see when it is all put together. But yeah, we've started to see at least part of the transportation hardware that is going to be used.
We all know that the best terminology for that is down ending and up ending per Blue Origin.
Yeah.
Core stage looks to have paused for a moment here, but this is normal. Usually they come out a bit, pause a bit, go a bit further, pause a bit, go a bit further, pause a bit, and then they'll pick up speed. They'll go a little bit, not super fast, but they'll go a little bit faster once they're out of Pegasus. Of course, they want to be extra careful as they roll out of the barge here with that. It's perfectly sized for the core stage, but they want to be careful nonetheless because there's not a lot of room for error. So need to be careful when they move this stage out of the barge because, of course, should the worst happen, it's going to be a little while until the replacement is ready, which would be Artemis IV's core stage. So. Let's see here. Space Enthusiast is asking, will Artemis 3 be uncrewed, as we haven't heard anything about a crew at all, or is that not worrisome right now? I'm pretty sure they want to put a crew on board if they're going to be testing spacesuits, but they haven't said anything about the crew, which is kind of surprising considering that the Artemis 2 crew was announced like 3 years before they launched. Maybe they didn't want it to be 3 years before they launched, but it was still a very long time before they launched.
I'm sure. So, it's a not really well hidden secret that NASA usually trains crews sort of in the background for a little bit before actually announcing them, right? Especially for commercial crew. But for Artemis, I wouldn't be surprised if there were already crews more or less trained on different things, right? You got to think about this. it'll heavily depend on which lander they go to. And Laura Glaze also talked about this to the NASA social people a couple of weeks ago, where it was like, we may have two crews actually, one that trains on Starship systems and the other trains on Blue Origin's systems, right? Like that may not be a really far out sort of thought, where it's like you've got one crew that specializes on one thing and then the other, and once closer to the launch, then we decide, okay, we fly this mission profile, and therefore, we select, we fully select this crew. Whether we'll know that crew ahead of time, I have no idea, to be honest. There's a good chance that we may not know until later this year, but who knows? Like, sometimes some of these announcements are, out of the blue, no pun intended. And so could be maybe at the beginning of summer, if I were to guess. There's probably already crews though training in the background. We just it's not publicly known, right? That will be the point.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a bit weird for NASA to go on stage and announce 8 astronauts for Artemis III, and then a few weeks later be like, actually, 4 of these guys are going to space. I mean, I think NASA would prefer to avoid those headlines and would prefer to create some more, awe-inspiring headlines, not astronauts snubbed because SpaceX wasn't ready or Blue Origin wasn't ready. So yeah, that might make sense why they're just holding off, waiting to see what actually flies. Or maybe best case scenario, both landers are ready and they get to have a combined crew. Like two of the crew are SpaceX trained, the other 2 are Blue Origin trained. Who knows? Speaking of being ready for Artemis 3, Snap is asking, which lander do you think is going for Artemis 3? I'll answer this as well, but Alex, I'll go to you first. What do you think is going to be the lander, if it's only one, or do you think both are going to be ready?
Oh boy, I think for a 2027 launch date, it's going to be very tight for either of them to be ready. But for the Artemis 3 profile in particular, I wouldn't be surprised if Starship is first. For the Artemis 3 profile, I'm trying to sort of, emphasize here. A whole different thing is Artemis 4, right? Because you got to go all the way to the moon. You got to actually go through the tankers and everything. It's a lot of tankers, whereas, Blue Origin's plan is, in theory, to only have 4 launches of MK1 style landers that sort of, go and push out the actual crew lander and everything. So, for Artemis 3, I see it more likely for Starship. But then again, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of testing that needs to be done, right? And we have seen very little of both providers. Believe it or not, even if you've seen Endurance and the MK1 Blue Moon lander and everything, that's still nothing. Like, where's the crew cabin, right? For example, and things like that. Like, we have not seen anything of that sort being proposed, or even what their MK 1.5 or whatever you want to call it, a proposal, right? We only know it because Eric Berger wrote about it in Ars Technica like a couple of months ago, and that's the only way that we really have any way to sort of guess what's going to happen, right? HLS, the same thing. Last video that SpaceX showed, lots of things about Flight 12, and he was like, yeah, where's the HLS, right? But hopefully in the next few months, I really hope that this year is the year where, we get the big announcements, not only the crew of Artemis 3, but, here's our lander, here's our designs. So I think for Artemis 3, it's probably going to be a little bit easier for the SpaceX side of things, because they already have shown cabin mockups. We've seen that at Starbase and things like that, right? We know a little bit the layout and things like that of that cabin. Like, they have a design that they have shown at the very least. And they have also said back in October that they were building a ground high fidelity cabin, right? It wouldn't be that outlandish to think that, maybe they can put that on an actual flight vehicle and fly it into low Earth orbit once they demonstrate that they can deorbit Starship without keeping it up there in orbit, right? I think for Artemis 3, it can be more ready than Blue Origin. Artemis 4, I'm more siding on Blue Origin's side for now, but we'll see.
I'm I have a similar opinion, although I think Artemis 3 is. Maybe I'm just being overconfident here, but I think for the Earth orbit stuff, there's a good chance that both of them are going to be ready. But I'm kind of leaning Blue Origin a little bit, maybe like 60-40 to Blue Origin. In terms of the moon landing, I'm leaning a little bit more towards Blue Origin simply because they will already have, fingers crossed everything goes well. They'll already have moon landing experience, plenty of moon landing experience across both the smaller and the larger landers by that point. So I don't know, but if SpaceX can surprise me, I'd be more than happy to be surprised by SpaceX. But Starship has been struggling a little bit. I think it's fair to say. SpaceX themselves even acknowledged that they've had hit a few roadblocks in their recent video. So they need to get through the snags and kind of ramp up the cadence and get this vehicle as operational as quickly as they can.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, you may even agree with me that, it'll also depend on the Flight 12 campaign, right? And what they do during that flight. Where it's like, if it doesn't perform well, some of these expectations may change, right? Like if you ask us like in a month or two after flight 12, hopefully happens within a month, after flight 12, right? Like maybe if you ask us again, we may change our mind, right? If 12 flight 12 doesn't go well, if it does go perfectly, then I think that they have a really good path, right? Of not having to really, how to put it in a nice way, not a tragic 2026 basically, just like we had last year with version 2. If they do have a really good flight 12, then of course they're gonna have good chances of getting through the timelines. But again, needs to go right, and that is complicated. It's a very complex vehicle.
My hope is that all of the ground testing they've been doing, like the months of ground testing they've been doing, is gonna help them get things right on the first flight of version 3 Starship. But again, if recent history is to be believed, the first flight of version 1 Starship didn't go very far, and the the first flight of the second version of Starship also didn't get very far. So, but I want to be optimistic. I want to hope that the ground testing is gonna make things different this time.
Yeah, I usually tend to say that it is true that Starship is iterating and moving through versions, but in theory, it's based on previous versions lessons, right? Like the lessons learned from previous versions. And if you keep failing and having failures and things like, it's like, then have you learned anything, right? And I don't know, like I look back, for example, on Falcon 9, it was constantly changing, like, changing versions in a couple of years and landing and launching payloads too. And it was like, yeah, it's launching perfectly. And it actually failed after many flights of the same variant, right? It didn't fail on a first flight or on the first flight of any version. In fact, when it returned to flight after Series 7, it was the first flight of a new version. It landed the booster for the first time, deployed the most satellites up until then for the company. Like, that's what you expect when you move to a new version, right? You remove all of the things that troubled you in the past versions and move on to new things, new and better things. And I hope Flight 12 is just like that. But we'll see.
And the core stage is continuing to roll out of Pegasus. This is, of course, for those of you just joining us, the Space Launch System core stage for Artemis 3. This is the big orange part of the big orange rocket, and it is continuing to roll out of the transport barge. And I think we can even now see the intertank section exiting the barge now as well, which is much more orange than the other parts. Of course, this spray on foam gets tanned in the sun, so I'm sure it's going to be a little bit darker by the time it gets to the VAB than it is right now. Looks like we've got some fresh Sophie on some parts of the tank as well, which is pretty not orange at all. It's like a white almost.
Yeah, because so now we can see a few more parts. So now we see the liquid oxygen tank right in the middle. To the left, the engine section. Again, it's not the real engine section for this stage. It's sort of like a stand-in for the real one. And then on the right, you see there the intertank section. And all the way still inside the Pegasus barge is the liquid oxygen tank and the forward join. The forward skirt, excuse me, not the forward join. Technically, it's a forward join. So bit of technicality. The forward join
we go.
is when they made that intertank section with the liquid oxygen tank and with the forward skirt. But anyway, yeah. It's
Yeah, when they
5
combine
parts.
the parts of the core stage, they call them joins. And we were
Yep.
talking about this because we showed a picture on a recent episode of This Week in Spaceflight of. Was it This Week in Spaceflight, or was it one of the Breaking Space videos? I can't remember. Either way, we showed a picture of the major join, which is like one of the final bits they put together in Mashoud. And Kevin was like, "Why did you call this a major join? What on earth is a major join?" I'm like,
That's a
"Hey,
word.
I'm just using what NASA calls it. If you have a problem with the terminology, you got to bring it up with NASA because
Yeah.
that's what they call it."
But yeah, they had the liquid oxygen tank, the one on the right. They have like a vertical test cell, not test cell, but it's sort of like where they join the 3 parts. It's first the intertank there that we see in the middle, then the liquid oxygen tank on the right, and then much further to the right, there's the forward skirt. It's sort of like a little bit of an extension, where eventually in the future, the launch vehicle stage adapter will be attached to. But yeah, they put all 3 together. That's the forward join, and then they put it horizontal. They made it to the liquid hydrogen tank on the left. And if they had actually had the engine section at Michoud, then they will have installed the engine section and the engines and everything. But that was only for Artemis 1 and 2. Again, for Artemis 3 and onwards, they're doing it in the VAB in vertical orientation.
It's also great to see the very secure connection points with the transporter as the core stage rolls out there.
Yeah, I think you can see the bolts there for the flange between the intertank and the liquid oxygen tank. If I'm not mistaken, there's 360 bolts, so essentially 1 per degree.
Oh my goodness!
So
That's like a lot of bolts.
It is. There's a lot.
That's so cool to see zoomed in. You can even see with this sun angle, like the roughness of the foam on the side there, which is, I mean, that must be fresh. They must have literally just sprayed that on after the join, because I mean, it hasn't seen any sun whatsoever. It hasn't been tanned at all.
I believe these are called RATs, roll and transport. I think it is the structures, the yellow things that are attached to the core stage for transport.
You can see the
But yeah.
texture as well on the side. That's really cool.
It's orange.
It's orange and it's bumpy. It's fluffy.
Yeah, and it's huge. That liquid hydrogen tank, you really don't know how huge that is until you see it. There we go.
Let's see
Remove
here.
before flight.
Yeah, I do hope that they remove the fake engine section before flight. Would be unfortunate. John has been in the store. Thank you, John. Getting the "Of Course I Still Lie Here" beach towel. Of course, very relevant with the recent news about just read the instructions. Thank you for that. Hope you enjoy. Let's see here. We have a question. We've been talking about the landers being ready for this mission, but Amy has a great point. They are asking, when will the spacesuits / clothing be done and fixed so we can be ready for liftoff next year? That's another very topical news item, Alex, because we recently had that Office of Inspector General report into the status of the Axiom Space spacesuits, which NASA is contracting for walking on the moon. And I wouldn't say it was doom and gloom, but it certainly wasn't all positive.
Yeah, there were. To be fair, to Axiom, most of the excessive criticism, I guess, it was towards NASA for making it a fixed price contract, right? We talked in way long detail in the Flame Trench last Friday on our weekly sort of discussion show that we have on Friday, and yeah, I mentioned that it is true that it lists all of the challenges and everything. It also talks about so some of the work that Axiom is doing to be able to address those challenges, and also Jared Isaacman has been talking about this recently, where it was like we're not going to sit idle. We're going to implement our experts into the program and embed it with our contractors and be able to make sure that things can be completed on time and that we're not left without spacesuits. Now, technically for Artemis 3, they are not they are not super duper needed. For Artemis 3, one of the reasons for that is just it's because it's sort of like an additional thing that they want to do, but it's not part of the mission. Like the primary thing is the landers. If the landers are not ready, Artemis 3 is probably going to be delayed. If the suit is not ready, probably Artemis 3 will still go on time, right? But since you're doing the testing of the lander, you kind of want to also do a test of the suits. And they still want to do at least some kind of test of those suits next year, whether it's on Artemis 3 or on the ISS, because the ISS is another platform where you can launch these spacesuits, right, and do the testing. They want to do that in microgravity, and so we'll see whether they are ready for either Artemis 3 or ISS testing next year. They hope they will be, but anyway, we can now see that the core stage is fully out of Pegasus.
Indeed. So cool, you can even already got one of the tracking markers painted on.
Yeah. You might notice, in fact, that this core stage doesn't have many of those, unlike the previous two. Also, much cleaner Sophie. I was going to say suit. I'm so used to Falcon 9 these days. But yeah, it's much cleaner Sophie because it doesn't have as many sensors as the previous two core stages. So there's a few things here and there that have been removed that are not needed anymore because they've got all the data that they needed. There still are some places where they do have sensors and whatnot, but most there you can see it's way cleaner than the previous versions. Like they will be what they call like sensor islands, right? Where you will have like a bunch of sensors connected to the rest of the stage, and like you will have a little bit of like a, I don't know, like an Oreo patch, so to speak, right, on the core stage. And that's where you will have a bunch of the systems for the sensors and whatnot. So yeah, those are no longer there on this one.
Yeah, I mean you could see it there panning along. It's just like one continuous huge stretch of foam. It's very satisfying. And that is a big rocket core stage right there. Really, because the barge is perfectly sized to fit the core stage, it doesn't really do it justice. But you can see the people walking underneath it, like humans to scale. That is a big rocket, and it's going to have 2 SRBs strapped to the side and an ICPS maybe, and a Orion spacecraft stacked on top as well.
Yeah, one of the things, since we're talking about booster sizes and everything, we were talking about that earlier. I said Super Heavy is longer. This, if Super Heavy were not around, this is actually the longest first stage ever. Because if you look around all of the other first stages and whatnot, this is actually the largest. Now, Super Heavy is longer, of course. Mm-hmm. You know what's the third longest, I think, right now, at least active, is New Glen's first stage.
Wow.
It's like nearly 60 meters. It's like a little bit shorter than this one.
I mean, New Glenn is quite literally the same height as SLS, so that does make sense.
Yeah.
We've got some really great analysis from Adrian in chat, and they are asking, is it just me, or does the orange part of the SLS core remind anyone of a cardboard tube that's been left in the sun too long? It does kind of look like that. It's just a little bit bigger.
I guess.
It's like one of them tubes that you get posters or something in. Much like the packaging you might get if you get a print from shop.nasasspaceflight.com. That was subtle enough, right? No one noticed? Oh, and Adrian also gifted a Red Team membership. Thank you for that support. Very much appreciated the support we're getting at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. Let's see here. We have another Starship question here from Barney. They are asking, is it likely the Starship fuel transfer will be attempted before the Artemis III mission launches? I think this is another good question because let's just say we've got like half a year and most of 2027 let's say maybe 15 months. Do you think that SpaceX will get fuel transfer done in the next 15 months before Artemis 3 could launch? Maybe?
I hope at the very least sort of the first test of that happens. If again, ask me in a month, right, after flight 12. But I think if it happens, like if flight 12 doesn't go the way of the previous version to the view, right? The version to the view. I think there's a good chance that it happens early next year at the very least, right? That they do a few missions this year and then they're able to ramp up the cadence next year with, 2 more launch pads coming online and whatnot, and getting the gigabase more or less a little bit more outfitted and whatnot. I don't know about them being in a position where they could immediately launch Artemis 4, right? The actual full out lander and things like that. I think there's a good stretch in terms of complexity of doing it once. Might be it's already a step, right? But then doing it over and over and over again, it's sort of like the ramp up also in launch cadence. It's gonna be very much like that, right? Doing it once, it might be a fluke if it goes well. That's sort of one of the problems that they also have to figure out, whether it's just pure luck or if they actually got it right. And so we'll see what happens with that. They also have an uncrewed landing, by the way, that they need to perform hopefully in 2027. So there's a bunch of other things that they have to go through, even apart from Artemis 3 alone. And so there's a lot of things. Yeah. It's not that easy.
Yeah, that fluke part is really important because it needs to be for Artemis to work. It needs to be repeatable, and they need to be able to do this many more times into the future because Artemis is designed to be, or it is at least envisioned to be, this sustainable and permanent presence on the moon. Because we don't want to go to the moon and then leave 3 years later, like we did with the Apollo program, right? We want to get to the moon, and when we get there, we don't want to leave. We want to stay. That is the future we all want. So, yeah, they need to be able to do it multiple times. We have a question here from Gwen Ever. This is another HLS related question. They are asking, with the rumored pushback of the Human Landing System flights to the end of 2027 already, will the stacking of the Space Launch System be delayed from the previous announcement? I don't think so, because I'm pretty sure they can keep it vertical in the VAB for like ages, but what do you think, Alex?
Well, the way that I heard it, by the way, I watched the full hearing yesterday. There's another one, I think, in about an hour or so. Yesterday was the House Appropriations Committee. Today is the Senate Appropriations Committee. It's a whole thing. I actually watched it instead of reading tweets, by the way. So I can tell you the way that he was talking about it, I think he was talking about the uncrewed landings in preparations for the crewed landing in 2028. That's how I took it, basically, because he was asked about Artemis 3. He talked about having, the reassurance from the providers that they're going to be ready next year, and then also by late 2027. I think the way, at least that I interpreted that answer, was talking about the uncrewed landings, which it would fit with what we know, at least from a couple of weeks ago, where we were told that, the idea will be the Artemis 3 mission happens, and then the uncrewed landings occur. Like it will be sort of late 2027 sort of thing, and then early 2028 the first crewed landing. I'm like, I will wait at least until today's other hearing, like the second hearing that Jared has, because he's probably going to be asked the same thing, right? And he's going to be asked timelines. I will wait until at least that. I bet he was just referring to that. That's at least how I took it when I heard it. Again, I think it basically fits what we have heard until now in terms of official timelines, right? That's sort of the point.
Yeah, I managed to listen into the first one in front of the science committee, but then I was a little bit busy yesterday with Falcon Heavy and Atlas, and I'm probably going to be a little bit busy today with SLS. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to listen into it myself. But yeah, thank you, Alex, for actually listening in and being able to tell us what actually happened and not just reading what happened on Twitter.
Yeah, I had a little bit of spare time while we were on our meetings.
Indeed. Again, we've got more people joining us as the morning goes on. So if you do have any questions or comments for us, make sure to tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight or at NSF, and they can come into the queue and we'll do our best at answering them. We have a question here from Max asking, will Artemis III be cancelled if it slips to 2028? They have time to launch Artemis 4 in 2028. They only have 1 ML. I don't think it would be cancelled, but it would be unfortunate. I mean, delays are not unknown to the Artemis program, considering that we have, just seen Artemis 2, which was meant to launch many years ago at this point. Yeah, I don't know. I think they would still get it. It would still go ahead, but because this is the plan that they've set out, so it would seem counterintuitive to scrap the plan and go straight ahead for a landing at this point.
I think the point of Artemis 3 is not just, reserving a moon landing in 2028, but it's also the fact that would you really go from basically Apollo 7/8 all the way to Apollo 11 without doing Apollo 9 or 10, right? Like, you really need a way to test the operations between the crew spacecraft with a lander, right? It sort of bridges the gap of technology, I guess, or hardware operations or whatever you want to call it, between just using the crew capsule, right, the Orion spacecraft, and then using the lander to go down to the surface. Now, the lander itself, Apollo 10 in this case, it's sort of like uncrewed. They don't really need to go all the way to the moon to test the lander because it's not like Apollo. Though Apollo was mostly automated, right? It was not entirely, right? They still needed a bit of human inputs. Starship and Blue Moon are being built to be fully autonomous. And so they're going to be doing that uncrewed landing without crew. That's the point, right? To do sort of like an Apollo 10 sort of thing of landing on the moon without anybody before they actually go and land with people. That's the lander side of things. But how do you test lander and crew spacecraft together? Well, you kind of have you kind of need some kind of a bridge mission, right, in between both capabilities. So that's what they're going to be doing on Artemis 3. I think it's not a bad idea, even if they were on time, even if this was 2023, right, and they were still on track for 2024, and SLS was having like a really good decade and production and everything, right? Then I think it will still make sense to have some kind of bridge mission in between. But again, I'm not the one making these plans, so.
Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, with Max Evans, who is in the field, is going to really appreciate this expert analysis from John Marquez, who says you can fit 33,700,000 of sausages of hot dogs inside of the SLS Core Stage. That's a lot of sausages. I hope we can relay that to Max, who is in the field providing us with some live feeds this morning. But yeah, very reminiscent of a sausage. Just saying.
It's ketchup. Or mayo.
Mm,
Okay, now I'm hungry.
yeah. Ketchup for me. Let's see here. We have another question from John, who is asking, if NASA manages to test both landers on Artemis 3, do you think they'll have a preference for which one is docked with first? I don't think so, but I don't know. Starship is quite big, so I'd assume that might be the most difficult to dock to with Orion.
Yes. It'll depend. Again, these are very hypothetical right now because we don't even know which orbit they're going to. Like, we're talking about the difference between it being a lower orbit or being a higher orbit. If it's a higher orbit, for example, you are in more of a similar kind of environment, right? because you're outside of most of the magnetic field. You're not as close to home, and so you still have some of the operational constraints, so to speak. It's not all the way to the moon either, so it's not super duper risky. Like you can still come back within a day and things like that. You also have other sort of operations that you need to rehearse. Like in that case, for example, Starship will need a couple of refuelings at the very least in order to push itself out to high Earth orbit. If it were Blue Moon, it probably needs one of the other Blue Moon tugs or whatever you want to call it, right? So there's that benefit of at least being able to test the operability. I don't think beyond that there's like a priority, right? Or at least right now, I don't think there must be some kind of priority. Maybe once we're closer to the launch, by then they might have like an idea of which one will be the lander for Artemis 4, right? And then you're like, the lander will be Blue Moon, for example. Oh, so well, now we are more interested on testing systems on Blue Moon because it's the one that we're gonna use on the next one. I think if that's a thing, it's something for closer to the launch. But right now, it's so open ended, right? That it's sort of like, who knows?
Indeed. We have this question from Archie. They're asking, now that Artemis 3 is no longer going to the moon and instead going to Leo, would that mean they wouldn't fully fuel the core stage, or will they adjust the trajectory? Well, first of all, we don't know if it's going to low Earth orbit. NASA has not put that like firm into the plan. Like they could go to a medium Earth orbit, they could go to a high Earth orbit. All we know is that it's going to be in an Earth orbit.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly which one yet. I think for the SLS architecture, Alex, they would still fully fuel the core stage. I think the question is more what would happen with the upper stage, considering the performance of the core stage. I mean, the core stage pretty much puts this thing in Earth orbit anyways.
Yeah, it can put the ICPS and Orion into this sort of low Earth orbit, like low-ish Earth orbit. It's still sort of lofted, right? Like it can go all the way to 2,000 kilometers in altitude, so it's quite high. Yeah, it probably so if it's a low Earth orbit mission, it probably won't carry the ICPS, the upper stage, right? It might be just on the core stage. It's funny because when SLS was being developed, they had this sort of Block 0 version, right, with no upper stage, and then Block 1 was like the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, which is a Delta 4 heavy upper stage, sort of standing in for an upper stage to give it like a little bit of a higher boost. And then the Block 1B version with the exploration upper stage. There was another one where it was like Block 1A, where they only modified the boosters, but not the upper stage. It was a whole weird thing. But yeah, back in the day, this whole thing of just having Orion launching straight off from the core stage was in the cards for the potential design. But they never actually implemented it. But now we're seeing that it might not be that mad of an idea. If you have it around, might as well.
Yeah. I mean, some of those configurations sounds like some horrible things that I've came up with in Kerbal Space Program. So probably for the best.
You got to think about this. Yeah, you got to think about this, right? Because the external tank and solid rocket boosters of the shuttle, they were able to put this 100-ton vehicle, like the shuttle, the orbiter, in orbit plus its payload, right? That's a huge amount of payload that you can actually launch into orbit. Now, the problem is, most of it was the orbiter itself, right? The actual payload was like 20-25 metric tons. Still quite big, let's be honest. Like 20 to 25 metric tons, you don't see that being launched any day, right?
No.
And so, but now instead of being the orbiter, instead what you launch is Orion, and the core stage is much larger than the external tank, and you have the 5-segment solar rocket boosters instead of the 4 segments. And so, yeah, it's got the capability of launching Orion a little bit even beyond low Earth orbit in just the core stage.
Getting a bit of an ML2 eclipse here, as the second mobile launcher is kind of the elephant in the Space Center sitting in the background, currently being actively deconstructed following that stop work order, because of course the quote unquote standardization of the SLS upper stage, not going to be using the exploration upper stage anymore, but we're going to be using a Centaur 5 upper stage instead from ULA. And NASA says they don't need the ML2 anymore. So they're going to use it for spare parts, or they're going to give it to industry. Yeah. I have to see how that one turns out. Starting to make the turn out of the turn basin kind of offload area. I think if they do the same thing they did with the previous core stage, they'll actually kind of do a U-turn into the big parking area they have at the press site, and then they'll drive into the VOB. I mean, technically they're kind of reversing right now, I think. So they kind of reverse around, do a turn, and then drive forwards down what is appropriately named Transporter Road.
Is there a bandwagon road?
I don't know. But that is a very funny reference. Let's see here. Again, if you are just joining us as we continue to watch throughout the morning the SLS Core Stage for Artemis III roll out to the Vehicle Assembly Building at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight or at NSF. Brings it into a nice organized queue for us here. We'll do our best at answering them. Speaking to Starship, of course, one of the landers for the HLS program, Max is asking, what altitude can Starship reach without refilling? Do we even know that right now? I mean, my guess would be not incredibly high, considering, you know, they already use quite a lot of propellant just getting into the almost orbital but still suborbital trajectory we've seen so far for the test flights.
As always with rocketry, it depends, right? If you're low on payload, you can probably loft it a little bit beyond low Earth orbit. It also depends on the kind of orbit. Like if you want an actual circular orbit, probably cannot go that far out, right? Because circular orbits are not easy once you get beyond low Earth orbit. It takes a lot of delta V, a lot of changing in your velocity, basically. But if you want sort of like a transfer orbit of sorts, I think without refuelings, you might actually be able to put stuff into GTO, into geostationary transfer orbit. Like at least, you know, again, it depends on the actual capabilities of version 3. We're basing this on a hypothetical scenario that we don't know yet. So take this with a great mountain of salt. But I think it might still be able to do like a few tons to GTO, to geostationary transfer orbit. But beyond that, I think it will still need, you know, a couple of refillings. I think at least for translunar injection, it might need 1 or 2 to do like sort of like a, you know, 8 figure around the moon and things like that. If you want to go into lunar orbit, then more refillings because you need to do more burns.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to land more, even that, right? That's why HLS needs so many of these refillings, because the more things that you want to do, the more propellant you need to carry with you, and so yeah, it takes a lot of energy.
And there you go. You can see the door is open in the VAB. That door underneath the Artemis banner is where the core stage will be rolling into. So it's gonna keep coming towards the camera. It's going to do a bit of a U-turn and then head out towards the left where that weird golf buggy looking thing is driving right now.
Oh, there we go. It's turning, I think. Or is it my eye? I think it's my eye.
I think it's still going a bit forwards. It's a little bit difficult to maneuver because the radius of that turn is quite tight, so they have to get this huge, long core stage around that tighter bend. Let's see here. Speaking of Mobile Launcher 2, which we can see in the background, this is a great question. I'm sure we're gonna have a great time answering this question. Ginag is asking or saying that I listened to one of the hearings that Jared Isaacman was questioned at the other day, and it seemed that they still wanted the second mobile launcher to be used. Who has the last say on these things? I think it might have been. I think that might be referencing Brian Babin, maybe in the science committee hearing, and he was like, "Well, I hope you use mobile launcher 2, and I hope you use an upper stage which is capable of 130 tons into orbit." And it's like, okay, mate. I regret to inform you, they've already started deconstructing it. So, I mean, this is a world of politics we're delving into now. But how does this actually work?
Well, in theory, Congress it has the purse, right, of the government, and sort of like the point is, in law, NASA is supposed to be finishing Mobile Launcher 2 and also continuing development of the exploration upper stage. What Jared and the current administration and the presidential budget report want to do is convince Congress that those programs shouldn't continue, right? Law, just like many other things, can be changed, and so that's sort of the purpose of Jared going to these hearings and telling both to the House and to the Senate, being like, okay, folks, like this is what we're trying to propose to you. We really need to work this out, right? Like, I've seen some people, especially in social media, being like, why do they waste Jared's time with these hearings and everything? And it's like, that's the whole purpose of his, position at NASA. It's to vouch for the administration and basically go out to Congress and tell, we need to do this. We need the money. We want to do this. And, we want to change plans this way and this other way. And then conversations happen, hearings happen. And that's how they work it out. Like, that's actually, at least in writing, how it should be, right? That things should move in that way. Speaking of moving in certain ways, SLS Core Stage is moving. I wanted to do that joke. Sorry.
Good timing. I mean, yeah, as I said a little whiles ago now, they'll do this all day. It's like a stop, start, but they go a little bit, make sure everything's okay, go a bit further, make sure everything's okay, go a bit more, make sure everything's okay. Because, of course, this is a very expensive core stage, and beyond it being very expensive, these things are rare. Like, if something was to go wrong, they're going to have to wait a long time until the next one is ready to go off the production line, so they can't make mistakes here. They need to be very, very careful. And what's especially cool is now that the core stage is making the turn, we can see the other side now, and you can almost see darker splodges on the side of the hydrogen tank there in the spray-on foam insulation, and that's pretty neat.
Yeah, and you know why?
Why are there darker splodges, Alex?
That's from the lights. So the whole reason why it's that is because of the light inside of the Michoud hangar building, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the buildings where they integrate the stages. And the reason why this one has the spots and not the previous two actually had the spots, but because they integrated also the core stage engine section and they had to rotate the thing, the spots sort of spread over 360 degrees because they kept rotating the thing. And so what you see is like bands of the light hitting on the spray-on foam and tanning the the lights can actually also tan the foam, and so that's why you have the spots, so to speak, on this one, because they didn't rotate it as much when they did this. If they had installed the engine section at Michoud, then we will see sort of what we see on the previous two core stages. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised we haven't gotten any questions about SLS readiness, because I've read chat here, like I have it. You have the panel, but I read it directly off YouTube and everything, and I'm surprised that nobody's asking about SLS's readiness, because I see this core stage and it doesn't even have the full transfer lines installed. The raceways and pressure lines, for example, are not installed. There's a lot of things to install yet on this vehicle, and we've only got maybe like a year. And the way that this core stage works, it can take a long while to complete. So we'll see.
I mean, I think everyone's asking about the lunar landers because everyone is, very confident in SLS. It's going to be ready on time. Absolutely nothing can go wrong. And, historically, SLS has always been ready to launch exactly when NASA said it was going to be ready to launch. So I don't think there's any concerns there whatsoever. Sarcasm intended.
Yeah. I'm more concerned about Artemis 4 and 5. Those core stages are way, way much more incomplete. Like core
Yeah.
stage 4, I think the hydrogen tank or one of the tanks is not complete on Artemis 4. And Artemis 5 is still sheets of like, the panels of metal
Yeah.
still not welded together. Most of it at the very least. There's still some barrels, that they have to put together. And this is launching in 2 years, basically. Like, if the plans go ahead, in 2.5 years, Artemis 5 should be launching. You know when they started Artemis 3's core stage? I told you, the engine section arrived to the Kennedy Space Center in December 2022. Yeah, so if you run the numbers,
Yeah.
you'll see that there's not a lot of time.
I mean, it really puts everything into perspective when you consider that SpaceX is able to manufacture an entire super heavy booster in, the space of a couple months. And it's been more than
Yeah.
4 years, and this is the state of an SLS core stage.
Yeah, Booster 20, for example, at Starbase is about, like, it's close to being completely stacked. Booster 19 was completely, so the previous booster was completely stacked in basically the day before Christmas Eve, so the 23rd of December of last year. So it will be what? A little bit under 5 months or so in between boosters being fully stacked. Now I know, it takes up a bit longer between stacking and actually having the booster ready, right? I'm actually the first one to always emphasize that. I know that firsthand, but still, like, doesn't really take as long.
Let's see here. Tom Haygood. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. You see that the core stage now starting to turn and do its U-turn before it then drives up into the VAB. You can also, now it's closer, you can also see the wire that connects up the two ends of the transporter, so they can talk to each other. That's cool. Let's see here. We've been getting some questions about what Orion is going to be launching on Artemis 3, and I've seen some kind of fair comments, and they're all like, "Why are we launching this big expensive rocket if we're just going to Earth orbit?" So Ziggy is asking, where would they put Orion? Would it be on Falcon Heavy? There's another question here. Mac is saying that, do they need SLS to put Orion and the service module into orbit for rendezvous? Can they use another launch vehicle? And part of the reason for Artemis 3's reprofiling is to test the landers in Earth orbit, but another part of Artemis 3 is to speed up the SLS cadence. And you can only speed up the cadence if you launch more often, and if you don't want to launch on SLS, that defeats the purpose of speeding up the cadence. So do you think that they can actually speed up the cadence with SLS, Alex? I mean, to me, it seems like a bit of a big giant that takes a while to wake up.
I mean, as we were mentioning, right? One of the major things that they need to is also to increase the production. One of the many topics of these hearings that Jared is going to is a lot of the senators and Congress people. They're asking him, like, what is going to happen after Artemis 3 or after Artemis 5, excuse me, and he's trying to convince them, right, that there's probably going to be some kind of commercial solution, some kind of commercial SLS/Orion system. My thinking, though, at least from all of the things that we know about how long it takes to build some of these stages, is that there's a lot of long lead items. Like, if you want to build beyond Artemis 5, you really need to start already ordering those parts, right? Like, right now. And the earlier that you do that, the better. And this applies to many other companies and other programs, right? The difference is that in the case of SLS, the way that the management of the procurement, for example, has been horrendous. Like procuring maybe one mission at a time, or doing like one or two. Like, it's only 5 missions, right? You see across the industry, you see, for example, New Glenn, Starship, and whatever. You see dozens of boosters, dozens of upper stages, right? So when they order parts, they order hundreds of them, maybe, like, and here it's like 5 core stages are only under contract. So if they really want to continue with that, they really need to start right now. So that's one part of your question being addressed, Ryan. The other one was about, do they, like, cannot they launch this on another rocket? And apart from your point, I will say the other problem as well is that if you were to do that on paper from a performance standpoint, New Glenn, Falcon Heavy, etc., they can launch Orion and its service module into low Earth orbit. But then you have the question, okay, now we need to actually do the work, the engineering, and put this thing on those rockets and also make it crew capable, because there's crew launching on this mission. That's the whole point, right? To meet with the lander and have those operations between Orion and the lander with the crew. And so isn't that going to be much more work than just, launch SLS here? It's already there. It's already launched people, right? Everything is already done. And so you don't need to do all of that weird engineering, right? That's sort of the point. Now, whether you want to do it for later missions, I wouldn't say no to that. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some other options for this commercialization of Artemis and everything past Artemis 5 might be to launch Orion on New Glenn, whatever other rockets you might think of, right? That can push it far enough. But yeah, that's basically why they're using SLS. It's already there. It's already launched crew. Why are you going to go through all of the different things to maybe not even launch it next year? Because those things take time.
Yeah. As I'm sure we all know from the commercial crew program.
Yeah, right. I still remember 2014 was when they got the contracts. They said, yeah, 2016 we're launching crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
In 2 years.
Yeah, maybe just takes maybe 4 years longer.
It takes a little bit better.
Although it's pretty crazy that we are already 6 years after Demo 2, and that's like that's 2/3 the time, the gap between the last shuttle flight and the first Dragon with crew on board. Like we are 2/3 into the shuttle gap already, and that shuttle gap felt so long. And the fact it's been 6 years already is like, time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
Yeah, now it feels commonplace, but that's sort of the point, right? Like, you have to ride through the pain of having to develop the new thing, and once it is operational and ongoing and everything, you don't even notice that it's there. And it's like now it's very sweet that we have Crew Dragon operational, and missions going up and down from the ISS, hopefully in the future from commercial space stations.
Yeah, good thing that the commercial space economy is fully thriving, with multiple providers able to transport crew to the space station. Whether they can bring them home is another question.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier, but we've got some more people joining us as the morning progresses, and SLS kind of reverses around that corner there, so we can talk about it again. But William is asking, any idea when the Artemis III astronauts will be announced?
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier, right? Where it was like maybe there's gonna be like 2 different crews, even one specific for one lander, the other for the other lander. We really don't know, right? They're still making that trade-off and things like that. I'm sure, or I hope at the very least, that it's probably gonna be before the summer, like in the next month or 2, that we're gonna have that announcement. But once again, just stay tuned and see. We're definitely gonna cover it, whether it happens in a month or 2 or in a year. Whenever it happens, we're gonna cover it, because of course it's gonna be major news.
Exactly. So cool to see this huge core stage getting maneuvered around. We have another question here from Cross-Eyed Pilot, great username. How long was it from the previous SLS Core Stage rollout to the launch of Artemis II? That was July 2024, wasn't it, when the Artemis II Core Stage arrived? And then it launched, 28 days ago? So
Almost 2 years in between. Yeah. But remember,
Yeah.
when Artemis II's core stage it came with the actual engine section and the engines installed, right? So
Yeah,
much different.
much more further along in its development compared to this core stage, which is NASA keeps calling it the 4/5 of a core stage because it has everything apart from the engine section, which they're going to be
Oh my
mating
god.
inside the VAB.
I was looking at the Artemis II core stage arrival.
Hmm.
That was oh yeah, that was after the Starlink 9-3 mission with the
Oh,
Falcon 9 failure. We had a flame trench talking about Falcon 9 no longer being grounded.
that's awesome. Well, being grounded isn't awesome, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Again, it's
And
kind of the concept of time is weird because Starlink 9-3 doesn't feel that long ago, but the Artemis 2 core stage rolling out does feel a long time ago, and the fact that they were at the same time is like bending my brain.
yeah, and Artemis 1's core stage arrived to the Kennedy Space Center 5 years today. So 5 years
Really?
today, Artemis 1 core stage arrived to the Kennedy Space Center. Yeah.
Something must be going well with the 28th of April then.
It's funny because the Artemis 1 core stage actually, so the time between arrival and launch was shorter for Artemis 1 than for Artemis 2. The main driver for Artemis 2 was the heat shield on Orion, right? It was like a year and a half for Artemis 1, and this is a little bit longer for Artemis 2.
Let's see here. We have a question here from Pele Joe Music. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but they are asking, do you think that they will produce more core stages than they plan for museums like Saturn? I sure hope not, because all of those Saturn stages you see in museums were meant to fly into space. And
Yeah.
while I love walking around the Saturn V at the Kennedy Space Center, Saturn V Center, I would be much more happy if they flew that thing into space and landed another crew on the moon.
Yeah. You know what I said before, my little rant about the appropriations and like, you know, the contracting and everything of the core stages. Saturn V, by all means, all of the long lead items and everything, all of that was contracted even before Artemis. Apollo 11. Excuse me. Like in the late 1968, early 1969. But it took a while to actually get through the production of those stages, right? The stages that we see around right now, I think some of them are from like Apollo 18 and things like that. Some of the missions that were eventually canceled, right? And they were
like
canceled
1920 kind of time frame.
exactly. They were canceled as these stages were being finished, basically, but they had already been paid for and they had already been contracted, right? Here is the opposite. Everything has been sort of paid somewhat, or at least there are contracts all the way to Artemis 5, right? But it's not like there's a bunch of other core stages waiting in the wings and sort of, you know, being produced and everything and already being paid for, and suddenly Jared is like, nope, we're not building those, right? It's the opposite. They actually don't have any more contracts for any more core stages beyond Artemis 5. And so that's there's basically zero chance that we see any sort of, you know, museum piece or anything like that for SLS because of that. There's not going to be any leftovers.
While it would be cool to see a core stage up close, I mean, like I said, I these machines are designed to send people to the moon. So I'd much prefer them to send people to the moon than to sit gathering dust for other people to see. I mean, I think they can much better serve humanity by putting people on the surface than sitting in a museum. But I mean, if they want to make a replica, all you need is a big tube and some foam, and boom, you've got a core stage replica. Like,
I mean, if it were a program with lots of boosters and lots of different things, right? then I wouldn't mind them pulling off one and put it like a museum piece or something like that, especially if they're retiring the program, etc., etc. But again, a handful of core stages are the only ones that are being under contract right now. So yeah, it's not like you can do that sort of thing.
Let's see here. Again, if you are just joining us, feel free to tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight or at NSF with your questions and your comments. That brings it into the queue and we'll do our best at answering them. Lyle is asking if it would be possible to see an SLS rocket and a Starship at their respective launch pads at the same time at the Kennedy Space Center. You know, if they launch the HLS from 39A, I think there's a good shot. Even if they launch it from Slick 37, maybe, but if they launch it from Starbase, then that's going to be a little bit tricky. But I'm going to say, judging by how things are going, I think there's a chance that could actually happen if we have 3 more SLSs and Starship cadence starting to arrive on the Space Coast, maybe later this year.
Definitely next year. I think we might see the Artemis III SLS on the pad and a Starship on the pad as well at 39A next year. There's a good chance.
It's going to be some very, very good photos coming out of that, I can assure you, because everyone will be trying to find the angle where you can get like 39B in the foreground and 39A in the background, or vice versa. I wonder what it would be like to actually look down on 39B from the top of the Starship Tower as well, because that Starship Tower is like huge compared to the ML. We have another question here from the aerospace engineer, and they are asking, how do they rotate the core stage upright vertical after it is transported to the VAB? The short answer is they just have a big crane. I don't know if you have any more insight to add to big crane, Alex. That's the limit of my knowledge.
Well, they have the there's like a cap on the front end that they install, and then they rotate. So the way is like you take one end of the core stage down there all the way to the right, and then you pick up with one crane, and then the other crane sort of hooks up to the top end to the cover, right? And then you sort of remove the transfer the rats there, the roll and transfer or transport rigs, right? And then you just lift from one end and then sort of leave the other go down, and that's basically how you upend, I guess, the booster.
He said the thing.
It's sort of similar. I don't know if we have any Falcon 9 boosters on port, but they basically do the same with Falcon 9s as well. When they turn them horizontal, they use 2 cranes, one of them up top and the other one at the bottom, and they just lower one down, put the other way, and it's not too complicated.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we have any boosters at the port because, kind of out of character for Falcon 9. The last time it flew, I have to scroll down on Next Spaceflight, available on website and App Store. I have to scroll down to see the last time it launched from the Cape. It's been a week. It's been a week and no Falcon 9 launch from the Cape. What's going on?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting withdrawal symptoms here.
Hey, we're gonna get a Starlink. So after Falcon Heavy is all the way out to 39A to the right of this view, almost even to the back of this view, I guess. That's gonna launch tomorrow. 2 side boosters come back to land. Then a Starlink at the beginning of the month, and then we're gonna have to wait like almost 2 weeks to CRS-34, and that's gonna be another RTLS, another return. So no boosters at port.
It's so weird. It feels oddly quiet not having a Falcon 9 launching every 3 days. I mean, the rest is nice because, sometimes it does get a bit intense when you have a Falcon 9 launching every 3 days. But again, it's a bit weird not having that coming out of the Cape. They're launching a bit more from Vandenberg, They've still got a Vandenberg launch coming up in a couple days.
Yeah. they're more lucky.
Yeah. I guess the Falcon Heavy launch tomorrow kind of makes up for 3 launches, maybe. So it's got 3 boosters.
Yeah, they don't have those sort of things in Vandenberg, I guess.
No. Okay, so the core stage has now made the turn. It's done its kind of U-turn there at the turn basin. Been offloaded from the Pegasus barge, which arrived yesterday. And it's now making its way down the appropriately named Transporter Road towards the VAB. And you can see it's going a little bit faster now than it was when it was exiting Pegasus. Because there's no chance of them accidentally knocking against the side of Pegasus now. Let's see here. We have this is a cool thing to talk about. Well, it's not a cool thing to talk about, but it's an interesting thing to talk about, I should say rather. Galactic Cyan is asking, since SLS Block 1B has been cancelled, do we know what's going to happen with Mobile Launcher 2? Yes and no, I think, is the best way to answer that, because Jared Isaacman told us in our interview, which we did literally a couple days before Artemis II launched. He said that industry has expressed interest. Who is industry? He said it could be used for parts for ML1. That doesn't seem like using Mobile Launcher 2, so what do you think, Alex?
Well, I mean, yeah, part of the way that they're going to be using it is sort of for spare parts, because there's a lot of commonality, especially like valves and transfer lines and the what have you. With Mobile Launcher 1, right? And so that's one of the things that he was talking about, that they may cannibalize Mobile Launcher 2 for spare parts for Mobile Launcher 1. It makes the whole turnaround thing much faster because you have other parts already available. Again, what I said before, sometimes there are long lead items that you need if you need to order them. And yeah, Mobile Launcher 2 makes for a good thing to sort of, take some of those parts, and you don't have to order them, which may take a while. But I don't know who else might be interested in Mobile Launcher 2. Like what he said about industry being interested. I wonder if that's like about the commercial SLS that we were talking about, that he also sort of talks sometimes. I really have no idea.
Yeah. I think MR2 is just one of those things which we're going to have to wait and see. And luckily we can see, because they're building it like right in front of our cameras on Space Coast Live. We saw them stack this thing. We've seen them start to unstack this thing. Well, not unstack, but remove parts. I mean, the biggest thing was when they removed the crew access arm. That was like, oh, they're actually serious about this, and they're starting to remove parts away from the mobile launcher. We have another question here from JS Web Productions. Another good question, asking, what is the latest update on the next solid rocket boosters for Artemis III? Alex, we have talked about this in This Week in Spaceflight. Would you mind giving us a little rundown on what the status is for the solid rocket boosters for this mission? Because, of course, if it was just the core stage, I'm not sure it would have the thrust-to-weight ratio to get that far.
Yeah, so the 2 solar rocket boosters, so they have 5 segments each, right? The aft segments, the lowermost portions basically of each booster have arrived, and the reason for that they transferred those first is because they have the skirt and the nozzle assembly and everything. So all of those need to be installed. They need to be outfitted with all of those. It takes a while. It takes a few months even to be able to outfit all of that. It's sort of the most complex part of the vehicle, basically, of the solar rocket boosters. Apart from the forward end of the booster with the nose cone and everything, it's got all the systems as well there, some avionics and whatnot as well. Other than the front and the bottom of the SRBs, the rest of the stages can probably be shipped, or the segments, I should say, they can probably be shipped later in the year. I don't know when that'll be, but we'll see. Once the aft segments are completed, they can also be put on top of the mobile launcher, especially if the mobile launcher repairs and refurbishment have been completed. That doesn't start anything, any sort of clock or anything. It's when they stack the next SRB segment. So like they have, if I'm not mistaken, it is aft, center, center forward, and forward. So there's like 5 segments, right? Center being center basically, and then you have center aft or center forward, and then forward and aft booster. So they can put the aft booster segments, and then if they put the center aft, that's when the clock in quotes starts on the seals and everything. Technically, that clock is sort of like very loose, if you will, because for both Artemis 1 and 2, it's been like the solar rocket boosters have been stacked for way more than a year, and they really haven't seen anything weird going on there. It's a very conservative estimation, and sort of there's a lot of margins there. But yeah, that's basically where we are with the solar rocket boosters. Just the aft sections, so that they can get outfitted. We'll wait for the other ones. We'll stay tuned for train updates, if you will.
Love me some train updates. NASA train flight. That doesn't really work. Doesn't really roll off the tongue as well. But of course, those SRBs, they are the first bits of the stack that they put in. Like they put the SRB. It sounds counterintuitive, but they put the SRBs on the ML first, and then they slide the core stage in between. You might think that they put the core stage in and then kind of bolt on the SRBs to the core stage, but it's the other way around. It's kind of neat. Also pretty nerve-wracking when you see the B-roll they release of this huge core stage being lowered between these also huge solid rocket boosters. But NASA are professionals. They know exactly what they're doing. Bideford is in chat. Hello, Bideford. Good morning to you. They sure do have a lot of people just wandering back and forth during this very slow transport. Yeah, they have... they might have got a bulk discount on the high-vis jackets there, because there are a lot of people walking this thing towards the VAB. I'm not sure if they need that many people, but more eyes the better, I suppose, to make sure you don't accidentally scrape a lamppost or something. Let's see here. Another kind of theoretical question here. Max is asking, is there any chance of seeing a launch of Starship from Florida this year? I'm going to be the optimistic one, and I say yes. I think it's going to be in the winter, like maybe the October through December timeframe. But I say yes. I think there is a chance. I mean, if Flight 12 does loop-de-loops over Texas, maybe not. But if Flight 12 goes really well, which I think we all want it to go really well, I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to say yes, at least one, but only one. Two is a bit much, but I think one from 39A.
Yeah, we'll see. I think if it does happen this year, it's going to be way into late this year. I think it's going to be in the fourth quarter sort of time frame. October, November, December sort of time frame. I think I've talked about this many times before, where it's like one of my main concerns is the production of new vehicles, right? And what sort of trade-offs will SpaceX do in order to not affect the cadence of Starship launches? We debated this on the Flame Trench last week, where it was like, either have a short-term pain where it's like you steal a booster and a ship now from Starbase, and you sort of remove one launch from Starbase in order to be able to do that launch from 39A, or you wait until the production is good enough and there's been enough Starship launches that they start reusing boosters, at the very least boosters, right? I don't think they will have to wait all the way until ship reuse, but at least booster reuse might be important to get to before reliably sort of stealing vehicles from Starbase and sending them to the Cape. But hey, again, it's a trade-off. Maybe SpaceX will say, hey, booster 20, yoink, we're getting it to the Cape, right? Who knows? Maybe it's also ship 40 or 41 that might be going to the Cape. And then it's a short-term pain where it's like, oh, we cannot launch from Starbase for another 3 or 4 more months because we grabbed one of these vehicles and we sent it to the Cape to be able to launch from there. Who knows? But we'll see. I think it's really the timelines are really tight for this year from 39A.
Yeah, indeed. I think we might be getting a bit of a traffic jam starting now as they roll the core stage over the Saturn Causeway. That is that main road that runs all the way down to Launch Complex 39, all the way down to 39A, and of course splits off to 39B as well. A bit of a traffic jam starting. Hopefully, I think they might have timed this right and not done this at a shift change, which is probably helpful. As they cross the road here. Will take them a few minutes. Something that doesn't take a few minutes, though, is going to shop.nasaspaceflight.com, because it's really quick. It loads instantly. And on shop.nasaspaceflight.com, there is plenty of things which could take your interest, including the secret shop, which is still open for 4 more hours from the things that happened to Falcon Heavy yesterday, but especially, yeah, there you go, the wonderful Falcon Heavy special merch. That's the S word we're going to talk about, the special merch. But of interest is, of course, our Artemis II collection, which is still live. It's still there. So if you like Artemis II, like me and everyone else at NSF, and you haven't picked up some of our commemorative stuff yet, then go ahead and do so, because we've got awesome designs commemorating Splashdown, both on the shirts and this awesome kind of mug and sticker design, which I think is very cool. Splashdown, of course. I think Splashdown is actually our most viewed stream of all of Artemis 2. Nobody cared about the launch or the lunar flyby. Everyone cared about Splashdown, which is awesome. We've got a Copy Moonjoy collection as well, including the Coffee Moonjoy mug, which is, you know, if you asked me who made that, I would have said Sawyer, but apparently not. But still, a pretty cool design. Yeah, there you go. Coffee Moonjoy. We have all the other Artemis stuff as well from before the launch. You have to scroll down a bit to see it now because it's been a little while since launch, but it is there. Let's see. We've got the patch, of course, which is sold out. Patch is sold out. But if you still want to get the patch design, you can get it on the shirt. Those don't sell out, and you get it on the hoodie and all of that as well, which is a very, very cool design. I do like our patch. You know, I think the official patch is cool, but our patch is also cool. I think that's fair to say. We've got the sun shirts as well. And the Sophie sun shirt. I really like that design. I think that is very, very well put together with the, you know, the SRBs for the arms and the core stage. The core stage Sophie in the middle. Very appropriate for this stream. All available. Shops. Oh, and the pajama pants as well if you want. Get the full collection. Oh, we've got the old SLS worm as well. That's cool. I'm just reminiscing here. Got awesome prints from launch as well. Very, very pretty launch. And yeah, that as you can see at the top, someone might have left the secret shop open. So if you didn't get your Falcon Heavy S word shirt, I can say scrub. We're not scrubbing anything. There's no launch. I can say it's a scrub shirt today, right? That's not going to jinx anything. If you didn't get your scrub shirt, you've got 4 hours and 9 minutes to do so. Don't blame me if it doesn't launch now, because it's not today. I didn't jinx anything. It's not my fault. I promise. Okay, so we have just passed 10 o'clock local time in the morning in Florida. Oh, look at that. You can see 39B in the background. That's quite poetic, where this core stage will eventually be vertical, maybe in a few months' time. But this is 4/5 of the core stage of the Space Launch System rocket, which will be flying Artemis III, which isn't going to the moon anymore. It is instead going to be testing the lunar landers in Earth orbit. Going to be using one or both of the landers, whether that's SpaceX's Starship or Blue Origin's Blue Moon. And this will be launching the Orion spacecraft into that Earth orbit The reason I said 4/5 is because for Artemis 3 this time around, they're doing things a little bit differently. For Artemis 1 and Artemis 2, they integrated the entire core stage, bar the stage adapter, the conical structure at the top, at the Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans, Louisiana. That is where this stage is manufactured. However, for Artemis 3 and beyond, they're changing up the process a little bit. They've built the core stage, they've built all the parts of it at Michoud, but they've shipped it in a couple separate parts. So a few years ago, the engine section, which will be where you see that Boeing top, it'll be there. That's already inside the VAB. That has already been assembled and shipped to the KSC back in 2022. Picture of it there on the left-hand side. That's, of course, where the 4 RS-25s will be attached to. And then, separately, as we can see now, they've literally, over the last week, shipped the rest of the core stage on the Pegasus barge out to the Kennedy Space Center, and they are offloading it, or they have offloaded it, and they are now rolling it to the VAB. And that is what we are watching right now. That is taking place today on what is the anniversary of the Artemis 1 core stage being rolled into the VAB as well, which is quite poetic. You can see there are plenty of police about, plenty of cones to keep people out of the way. They are currently crossing the Saturn Causeway, which is the big road that runs from this part of the Kennedy Space Center out to the launch pads at historic Launch Complex 39A and also historic but slightly less historic Launch Complex 39B at KSC. And there's a little bit of a traffic jam starting to form, but I'm sure they are getting a good view of the core stage rollover down what is appropriately named Transporter Road towards the Vehicle Assembly Building, where this stage will then be integrated with its engine section. That's a kind of greenish cylindrical thing you can see on the right-hand side, which is currently hooked up to one of the transporters. That is a kind of a stand-in section for the time being. They're using that to transport the stage to the VAB. But that will eventually be replaced with the real engine section and 4 RS-25 engines to power this core stage.
Yeah, we can see the launch site right behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it's very poetic, very poetic. If you are just joining us, do tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight or at NSF with your questions. Let's hit this one from Ninja Guy Dan. They are asking, if the lunar EVA suits aren't available in time for Artemis 4, is it possible that NASA will turn Artemis 4 into an Apollo 10 style mission, doing a dress rehearsal and flying the approach for landing? I think they might just wait for the spacesuit, to be perfectly honest, because then that would then delay the landing to Artemis 5, and that might not be within the... Again, we're talking politics, but the president, unsurprisingly, wants the moon landing to happen when he's still president. And if they have to delay beyond January 20th, 2029, he's no longer going to be president. So he might not be too happy about that.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Ryan is asking if there's any possibility NASA would use a Centaur 5 for Artemis 3 to save the ICPS for Artemis 4. I think that might be a bit too soon, you know, considering they've literally just reprofiled the mission. I'm not sure if they had Centaur 5 if they could, you know, prorate that stage in the time required to launch Artemis 3 on time.
Yeah, it would be quite a lot. I mean, you're converting the mobile launcher to Centaur, right, and then converting it back to ICPS. It's not like 39A where they can convert between Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy, etc., right? And it's like a couple of weeks of work, maybe 3 weeks at most. It's not like that, right? And so yeah, doesn't make much sense.
We have another question here. Andrew is asking, why are there green rings on the core stage? Well, there's that kind of bigger one on the right-hand side, but I assume you're meaning the ones that are kind of surrounding the tanks there, because of course we have the big, or the right from this perspective, the right tank, that's the big hydrogen tank. Hydrogen is very not dense. It is basically the sparsest atom there is, the smallest atom there is, which is why it likes to leak a lot. So they have to have this huge tank for the hydrogen, and then the smaller tank on top is, of course, that liquid oxygen tank. But Alex, why do they have these green rings? Is it simply because they haven't finished spraying on the foam yet?
Yeah, it's part of sort of the when they join together the parts, right? You have those little sort of flanges, I guess, that are still with fresh foam. You got to think about this. So the forward join, the three sort of front portions of the core stage, the forward skirt, the liquid oxygen tank, basically, and the intertank sections, those get joined together first, and then that forward join, that whole assembly then gets assembled and joined to the hydrogen tank. And so, whenever they can, that's when they spray the remaining foam in between those flanges and things like that. And so that's basically why you see those sort of greener portions, I guess, or less orangey and more yellowish portions.
Yeah. Takes a little while for the foam to also tan, which is why you see some of that lighter foam kind of next to those sections as well. It's not orange yet. It's light yellow. It's slightly off-white. Doesn't really have the same ring to it.
Yeah, the tanks, if they were bare, they will be basically just shiny gray, just like Starship, basically, right? We see a gray metal color, right? It's aluminum in the case of the core stage of SLS. So it will look just like that. But of course, they put the primer, and then they put the spray on foam and all of that. It's what gives it the colors that we see there.
We have a question here from another one from JS Web Productions. They are asking, have you gotten an update on the condition of Mobile Launcher 1 after the launch? I'm not sure if we've got anything recently, but I mean, we got a picture from the NASA administrator on social media not long after launch. Laurie Glaze has also been talking about it to the press a couple times in the press conferences, but at least from everything I've heard, NASA is pretty impressed with how ML1 held up. Obviously, there's a little bit of, scarring to be expected. It's being blasted with twin 5-segment SRBs. These are, kind of the most powerful boosters ever built. So you're going to have a hard time protecting perfectly against those. But it seems to have fared much better than it did for Artemis 1, at least, which should bode well for a quicker turnaround for Artemis 3.
Yeah, that's one of the positives of the post-Artemis 2 sort of analysis, right? That the mobile launcher is in much better shape than after Artemis 1. They were talking about, for example, the conditioning system and everything of the pad actually worked this time around. On Artemis 1, it was blasted by the overpressure of the solid rocket boosters. And what happened is that it became unavailable. And some of that, it's like vent downs of the mobile launcher cavities, like some portions that may contain hazardous environments, not because of the gases themselves being hazardous, but because, like, for example, nitrogen purges, right? You don't want to be in a only nitrogen environment, because then where's the oxygen, right? You need the oxygen to breathe. And so those are hazardous conditions. You've got cryogenics still sort of running through some of the pipelines as well. And there's also a washdown that they do. There's like this sort of oversized sprinkler system, if you will, that washes down the pan after the SRBs ignite, basically because the SRB exhaust is very toxic, right? We're not talking here about the deluge, by the way. I'm talking about a post liftoff, like after liftoff happens and way later they sort of wash down. There's like massive cascade of water coming down from the mobile launcher precisely to wash down the surfaces, because it's corrosive and it's not only hazardous for people but also for the materials themselves of the mobile launcher, right? You don't want to have all of that junk basically sticking to those materials of the mobile launcher.
I'm sure our photographers can speak to the SRB gunk deposited by the Atlas and the Vulcan SRBs. Those are slightly different design to the SLS SRBs. So yeah, definitely don't want to be touching that exhaust with your bare hands when it's still fresh on the pad. You might want to employ the use of some disposable gloves with that. Speaking of Vulcan, UFO in chat is asking, can't Vulcan use the same SRBs as SLS does? It would save them a lot of observations. I think the SRBs on SLS would be a little bit overpowered for Vulcan. They are extremely large and extremely powerful. Vulcan's SRBs are less of a kind of the primary thrust and more of a supplemental thrust. I mean, just for comparison, at liftoff, the SLS SRBs are producing 80%, 80% of total thrust at launch. That is, the vast majority of the thrust is produced by the SRBs for SLS at launch. Vulcan, on the other hand, the SRBs are more of they add on.
I was going to say, I don't even think the SRBs can be connected to Vulcan. So just to put it in perspective, the SRBs connect to the aft there of that core stage into the intertank, like the 4 points connect to the intertank. That is as big, like as long as the entire Vulcan booster plus the Centaur upper stage and the interstage in between and a little bit of the fairing. Like Vulcan is tiny compared to the core stage. Like the core stage is longer than Vulcan itself. Like Vulcan with a short fairing is shorter than the core stage, and the only reason the long fairing version of the Vulcan rocket is longer is just because of the fairing. Like you will have to attach the SRBs to the fairings or something like it will be a very weird. Like it's just that big of a rocket compared to Vulcan, and Vulcan is not a small rocket, right? It's still huge, but we probably need some of your overlays, Ryan, once we get to Artemis III and it's out there on the pad to compare to Vulcan, because I feel like it's quite bigger just looking at the numbers. And remember, SLS Core Stage, it's got then the launch vehicle stage adapter, the cone-shaped sort of adapter up the top. With that one, it well surpasses the height of Vulcan, even with the longest of the fairings for Vulcan. And then you've got the ICPS, and then you've got Orion, and the abort motors and everything. Like, that's how huge SLS is.
Yeah. You might, unfortunately, it's not like KSP, where you can just slap on some radial decouplers, stick on some boosters, add some struts, make sure it doesn't flop around, and then call it a day. You actually have to think these things through a little bit more in real life. And is that a vaporizer headed to
I guess
39A right now, live on the stream? That's
Starship
cool.
tank farm, photobombing.
Starship Progress photobombing SLS. Convenient timing. I'm gonna write that down so I don't forget to pull that for the archive.
Put it in
I
socials
actually saw
too.
that live with my. That's the first one I've seen live with my eyes. Usually I miss them because they happen on Space Goes Live. That's the first one I've actually seen live in the flesh. Well, not in the flesh, but on the stream.
In the stream.
Let's see here. JS Web Productions has a question here. They're asking, can you explain why they call the SRB an engine? I don't think they do. Do they? Have I missed a memo somewhere? I'm pretty sure they call it a booster.
Yeah, it's a booster. Normally, so there's a very antiquated convention, I guess, of how to differentiate between solid rocket motor and solid rocket booster. Normally, solid rocket motors are like just one segment, right? Whereas solid rocket boosters, it's multiple segments. That's usually been the tradition. It's very old and antiquated, to be honest. But that's, for example, why for Vulcan, sometimes officially you may see things like just SRM instead of SRB, like solar rocket motor instead of solar rocket booster. But it's there's different conventions and things like that. It's technically an engine, I guess. It produces thrust and powers the vehicle, I guess. Even down to like an RCS thruster, that's still an engine. It's different kind of engine, but it's still an engine. I don't know. It's too wait of a specific question, I guess, but I don't see any reason why it would be wrong.
And again, we are continuing to watch the core stage core stage of Artemis III roll towards the VAB. Looks like the road is reopened. Plenty of Cybertrucks making their way to the pad. I'll give you one guess on which company operates those particular vehicles. But in the background, you can see there the core stage continuing to make its way down Transporter Road towards the VAB. And if you do have any questions for us, make sure to tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight or at NSF. Max is asking, what is the fate of another HLS provider that isn't participating in Artemis 3? Will it still be able to participate in Artemis 4? I think we were talking about this earlier about which lander will be ready for Artemis 3. I think the lander which is ready for Artemis 3 is probably going to be the one that NASA will stick with for Artemis 4. But for Artemis 5, I mean, they could switch it up and go to the other one. I think it all depends on who is ready and when, whether that be SpaceX or Blue Origin. You know, I don't think NASA is interested in, we're going to stick with this lander because we said this would be first 10 years ago. I think Jared Isaacman's approach is very much, whatever hardware is ready, we will fly that hardware and get this done as quick as we can because, well, in his opinion, it's incredibly important for the United States to do that. Let's see here. We have another question here. Amy is asking if the white building in the background is where the Artemis II crew came out of to go to the launch pad. I think you might be referencing there the launch control building, which isn't. The crew quarters is actually back at the operations and checkout facility, which is a few miles away from here, where these cameras are, back in kind of the, I don't know if it's appropriate to call it the industrial area of the KSC, but it's a few miles away. That building on the right there is actually where the launch control is for liftoff. So until the vehicle basically clears the pad, that is where all the controlling happens from. There you go. You can see on the right-hand side. But once the vehicle clears the pad, they then hand control over to Houston, the Johnson Space Center.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Another great question here from Max. They are asking, what is the loitering time in space of the second stage of Falcon 9 compared to Starship? This is something that we just learned the other day with that awesome Test Like You Fly video from SpaceX. They said that the current version of Starship will be able to hang out in space for 48 hours. How does that compare to Falcon 9, Alex?
Well, without the mission extension kit, it's like an hour and a half or two, more or less. Not more than that. Now, when they do install the mission extension kit, which usually entails like having a few more batteries, I think they even add an extra helium COPV, but also they sort of paint the RP1 tank. I mean, if we were to look at Falcon Heavy right now, we will see that second stage with the mission extension kit, because it's having like another burn 3 or 4 hours into the mission. In that case, the second stage can last for about 6 hours or so, more or less. A little bit longer, perhaps, but not more than that. It gives you enough time to basically go all the way to geostationary orbit, right? Which is good enough. That's all you need. For Starship, you need more loitering time. Haha, there we go. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, that's the second stage with the mission extension kit. The only visible part of that is the gray band there on the RP1 tank, which keeps the RP1, the kerosene, warm enough for the long coast in space. Yes, there's the sun hitting, and space, it's hot and all that stuff. The problem is, sometimes it is not as hot, and usually there's like a roll that they do in order to keep the thermals in and whatnot, and sort of that keeps things in check thermally. But yeah, in the case of Starship, if you were only to survive for 6 hours, for example, if you want to do refilling of the Starship and whatnot, that's not a lot of time. 48 hours, as they mentioned in the video, that might be good enough to be able to go up, dock, and transfer the fuel and come back. That might be good enough. Now, future versions or variants of version 3, you can tack in some kind of mission extension kit, just like we see for Falcon 9, right? Where you have maybe extra batteries or some kind of generator inside based off methane or something like that, or you put solar panels so that it can be up for longer, etc., etc. Like, you probably need to modify Starship, the base version of Starship, in order to be able to enable weeks or months of mission time and things like that. But just like we see for Falcon 9, the base Falcon 9 second stage is like maybe an hour and a half or so of duration, maybe 2 hours. But if you add a few things, then you can extend that to 6 hours, and so there you go. Same thing with Starship in the future. Base version is going to be sort of like 48 hours. Maybe you will be able to add more if you add a few other things here and there. NSF not sponsored by UPS.
Yeah.
So that I was like, oh, product placement, I guess.
Making an appearance.
Yeah.
But now we're getting closer to the VAB. You can really see. I mean, this is another thing that as you get closer to the VAB, you can really see the texture of the building, because far away it might just look like a smooth white and grey structure. This is corrugated. Like, you can actually see the bumps in the wall and the big door there of the VAB as we get closer. You can even, on the right-hand side, a cheeky sneak peek inside the VAB. You can see some of the kind of the truss structure, which actually makes up the structure of the building, which is pretty cool. Gina G has another great point here. Just realised that the core stage is only about 3 feet longer than the US flag on the VAB. My brain can't fathom that for scale.
Big flag for a big building. Here you go.
I think it's the width of each of those stripes is like the length of a school bus or something crazy like that.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Let's see here. JS Webb is asking, what materials do you imagine the tanker variant of Starship will use for insulation? Do you think it will be anything like what they use for the core stage? As we can see here, I gotta be honest, I don't think they're going to be spraying any Sophie on Starship anytime soon. I think they'll just use kind of the ice that builds up as the insulation.
I wouldn't be surprised if they use the tiles. So it might be counterintuitive,
Maybe.
but it's a thermal protection system, right? And the tiles, believe it or not, it's actually not that heavy. I think when they were talking about when they were having like 18,000 tiles or something like that, I think they were talking about in the order of like 10 tons or something like that. Tanker variant. So first of all, tanker variant is a whole different thing than the depot, right? The storage Starship is one thing. The tanker is the one that carries the fuel to the storage. So the tanker per se, like the literal tanker, will be the same as the current Starship, right? It's gonna have its flaps and the TPS and everything. But I obviously acknowledge that this one in particular was asking about the storage one. Now the storage one will not have the flaps, will not have the full on thermal protection system. So I could probably still have tiles, maybe thinner tiles. Don't have to be as thick, because you don't have to protect against really heavy heat, right? Of reentry. And it probably will be still fine, and it probably won't be that heavy. It's probably gonna be like I think it's probably gonna be like a couple dozen tons. Which again, if you remove the flaps, that's mass that you don't need, right? Like that's mass that you can trade off by putting, I don't know, more tiles to cover the tanks and things like that. I think that's probably gonna be the easiest way that they're gonna go with this, instead of, deployable shades or special paints. I don't know. They talked about special paints for HLS itself. We'll see. We've seen white tiles in the past. I wouldn't be surprised if HLS also ends up having tiles. But yeah.
Awesome side by side here with the kind of the top down view on the right and the closer up view on the left, approaching the door to the VAB. Again, throughout the morning, you might have seen they've been kind of stop start a little bit. That is expected. This is a very expensive core stage, and on top of it being expensive, it's a very rare core stage. They don't have loads of these just hanging about in a mega bay somewhere. They only have a couple more of these left, so they can't afford any sort of damage or mishaps or anything of the like. So they're being extra super duper careful on purpose. We just go past 10:30 in the morning local time in Florida. Oh, JS Web Productions has confirmed in chat that they were thinking of the kind of the depot variant. I suppose that does
Yeah.
make things a little bit more permanent if you're hanging out in space permanently.
Yeah, because the tanker, you actually want to fly that very quickly, right? You
Mhm.
want to launch the tanker, dock to the depot, and then come back and refuel and launch again, right? Like that's sort of the main point. You want it to be reusable. You don't want to expend that. That's the thing that's trucking you in the fuel to the storage one. It's sort of like the trucks going to the tank farm at Starbase, and then you sort of dump it in the ocean or something like that, right? Like you drive it off. We saw there a tanker. You see that? I talked about that, and then a tanker passes by. But yeah, like it's as if you were to drive that tanker to the tank farm, pull over and sort of load the tank farm, and then you go down with a truck to the beach and dump it in the ocean. It's like, doesn't make sense, right? You want to actually return it back and be able to reuse it again. You fill it up and then go out to the tank farm again. Blah blah, all the things. That was hilarious that the tanker passed by right as I said it.
I mean, it's great timing. I mean,
Yeah.
like, we are literally looking across the primary way, that the main road between, the outside world and the launch pads there, which is why you keep seeing cars moving back and forth in front of the camera here, because the road is called the Saturn Causeway, and it literally runs all the way down the crawlerway to 39A and 39B. And if you were previously unaware, there's a little bit of construction work going on at 39A right now, because SpaceX is outfitting an entire Starship launch pad and tank farm and related service equipment. So there's a lot of people that work down there, which is why you keep seeing these cars going back and forth, delivering people and or equipment to the launch pad. It also provides access to 39B, but that pad is a little bit more quiet than 39A. As the core stage for Artemis III continues to make its way towards the VAB door, it is still moving.
So I have news from the hearing. I haven't been watching it because I've been very diligent and very professional and being here on commentary. But I'm seeing the tweets. See, I'm now having to be the one reading tweets. Apparently, Jared said that we may be talking about Roman launching in August rather than September. That's quite hilarious. The Roman Space Telescope I'm referencing here.
That would be nice.
Yeah, right? August Falcon Heavy launch. That will be, what, 4 months from now?
On time and even more ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind a midsummer Falcon Heavy.
I mean, Falcon Heavy is pretty much ready. The pad has been converted. They have a couple of core stages already in storage and Falcon Heavy side boosters. I mean, the Falcon Heavy side boosters launching on this one is they're gonna be landing back on land, right? So they're gonna be reused.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know if it's gonna be on that mission, but definitely they'll have the hardware for it.
Speaking of things being sped up and being ahead of schedule, Jay Keegan, pushing the buttons for today's stream, has been doing some quick maths, and apparently this core stage rollout is even faster than it was last time around for Artemis II. I mean, it rolled out of Pegasus a couple of hours ago, and it's pretty much in the VAB right now, or thereabouts, which is like an hour quicker than they did last time. So, you know, NASA really trying to speed this up in every way they can, which is pretty cool. Let's see here. Rassilon has a great question. They are asking, how complete is the space launch system for Artemis 4, would you say? I wish we had a tracker that explained each component of each mission, where they're all set. Maybe we need like Starbase tracking, but it's like Machute tracking. I mean, we wouldn't actually be able to see much, so it'd probably be updated about once a year, but that would be cool, if at all possible. But yeah, Alex, would you mind just giving us a little rundown of where we are for well, actually, as it stands, the moon landing Artemis mission?
Yeah, to be honest, it's been a while since I've seen any updates on this one because, frankly, there's been a lot going on in the last month. From what I remember, the engine sections are starting from the bottom up, right? Engine section, it's at the Kennedy Space Center. It's inside of the VAB. It's in a different location than Highway 2, but it's in the VAB, right? Getting all the work and outfitting and whatnot. Now, for the tanks themselves, I still mix together. I think the liquid hydrogen tank has already been welded. It's the liquid oxygen, I think, that still needs to be complete and welded. But I believe it was already on the vertical integration cell, the vertical welding station that they have for that already like a few months ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually already finished by now. Again, this is from like a few months memory. I have not been able to follow any updates. That's basically why. Artemis 2 happened, and then all the things happened. So that is basically where we are right now. I believe the forward skirt and the intertank are also getting their final finishing touches, so to speak, before they are sort of ready for integration. It's the tanks usually, the ones that take a little bit more because they also have to clean them up. They also do some hydrostatic testing, or at least they used to do it for previous builds like this one, for example. In particular, then they have to apply the primer, they apply the Sophie and everything. It's a whole thing. Last I saw, they had not done any of the priming or anything like that for any of the tanks. So it takes a while. But my confidence on Artemis 4 core stage being ready for 2028 is not huge. And Artemis 5 core stage is even lower. As I said before, most of it is just panels right now. I think the one that is sort of the furthest along is the engine section, which is frankly it's the hardest to build. But it's right now like a barrel mostly, right? It needs to be shipped to the VAB, and then they'll do more of the further outfitting of the engine section.
I think during that answer, we might have been photobombed ever so slightly by the shuttle tanker.
Yeah, I think so. That's also hilarious because we see it also at Starbase.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that we see it so often that we're now seeing it at both coasts.
Yeah.
I think there might be multiple of those trailers. I'm not sure, but that might make more sense if they have multiple trailers with the shuttle on the kind of the decal. Let's see here. Bideford is in chat again. Thank you, Bideford, for your support as always. Off topic, but why was Falcon Heavy not delayed to today and it was pushed to tomorrow? Do we know why, Alex? My guess would be like maybe commodities or something, but it was a pretty late abort. It was like 28 seconds before launch.
In theory, at least from what we heard from SpaceX, they should be able to do a 24-hour turnaround, right? And initially, I think on their webcast, they even said that, if we can do this, we'll have a launch tomorrow, etc., right? I think there might have been other things in mind, right? If you look at this operation, I mean, we will have had the launch, 20 minutes ago, right? For Falcon Heavy. There was also the Vulcan last night. I'm not sure if that would have affected, but maybe those sorts of things, especially, because we're talking about commodities, right? Especially if for that 24-hour turnaround to be enabled, you still need some things being delivered. If you have roadblocks in place because there's another rocket launching nearby, then you probably are not going to be able to do that, right? And so I think that's probably the reason. It's probably a combination of multiple things rather than a single one. Especially because if we just take the turnaround time at face value, then I will believe at least the 24-hour thing. But it's like, well, maybe the 24-hour is because it takes into account some deliveries, but deliveries cannot be done if they had roadblocks in place because there's a launch, right? Then I can start understanding things like that. And so then I can see it push into 2 days instead of just 1 day. But yeah.
Very, very slowly approaching the VAB. Being very careful as they approach the building. Max has another question about Starship, and of course we're answering all Artemis questions today, so don't feel like if you only have questions about Starship or Falcon or anything like that that you can't ask them. Put them in chat. Tag us in chat, NASASpaceflight, NSF. We're talking about all things Artemis because, of course, SLS is just one of many launch vehicles which is involved in the Artemis program. We have Starship, we have New Glenn. Technically, we have Falcon Heavy, but that was going to be launching the Gateway sections and the Dragon XL to the Gateway, and Gateway kind of isn't happening anymore, so, or at least it's quote-unquote paused, but they're reallocating the power element, and 2 of the modules are corroded, so, it's a whole thing. But anyways, Falcon Heavy is still kind of an Artemis rocket in a roundabout way, so we're answering all kind of Artemis questions. One of those questions is from Max, and they are asking, is it possible to make a Starship lunar lander fully reusable in the future? How many tankers would it take compared to one-way missions? I'd hope they'd be able to fill it up with enough propellant in Earth orbit to send it to the moon and bring it back, but that would require one of the quote-unquote normal starships with the flaps and the heat shield to be able to be fully reusable, because it would have to come back to Earth, and the HLS design right now, well, it would very much burn up in the atmosphere if they tried to do that.
Ironically, it might be easier with the Blue Moon lander because they've. I don't know if you guys have seen when Blue Origin. I think it was like November, October of last year that they announced some kind of deployable. I guess it's sort of like a shield or something like that. It's sort of like a drag sail of sorts, if you will, right? Where it's like you can get close to the Earth's atmosphere on your way back from the moon and use that as your protection for your Blue Moon lander or whatever other spacecraft you may think of, and use that to decelerate and decelerate enough so that you can enter orbit back around Earth. What? What is this? Is that Rise?
What is Rise doing? Why is Rise okay? I think it might be a bit too windy for Rise. This was a surprise, but 2, very welcoming. Okay. Hi Rise, how are you? What I'm not 100% sure what to say.
They're probably taking pictures for socials or something like that, right?
Yeah. Maybe Rise got bored and wanted to come and see how Artemis 3 was going, since it came home on Artemis
You know,
Artemis 2?
if that zipper holds pressure, we can use that for the spacesuits for the moon.
I'm not
It
sure.
keeps sensing.
I'm not sure if that suit is rated for the harsh lunar environment, Alex. I think that might be a bit of a push.
I just love that I said that and it sort of danced. Oh, the timing. This stream has a lot of very hilarious moments of just pure timing of this, yeah.
Oh my god. Oh my goodness.
Are we zooming in?
We need to get Rise on as a guest for the Flame Trench or something.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Deep breaths.
I love that we're no
Deep
longer even
breaths.
showing the core stage.
We don't care about the core stage anymore. We've seen plenty of the core stage. We need to look at Rise. I love the fact that they obviously just set up next to. I think this is Jerry's camera, so they just set up next to Jerry, and then we just cut. We just cut to Jerry looking at Rise, just bouncing about on the side of the road.
Whoever is in that suit, you know, you're not being paid enough.
Yeah.
This is hilarious.
So, Rise, a question on topic. Have you got any thoughts on the current appropriations discussion going on for the NASA budget for fiscal year 2027?
It just turned around.
Yeah, maybe
anything
not.
about appropriations. I don't want to know.
I should probably ask some more questions, but I'm a bit distracted.
And
It
it
bounces
stands
up
in
and
again.
down.
Are they gonna
Oh,
remove
dear.
it?
Oh,
Or what?
okay. Where are they going? Oh, they're getting their picture taken.
Oh.
I
I
want to
think
get my
that's
picture
from
taken with
the.
Rise.
I think that's the PO, right? The one on the left. Oh, what's their name? I forgot.
PAO photo.
Yeah. There we go.
Smile for the camera. This is very wholesome. UFO in chat has got it. That's a giant 1G indicator.
Hey, you know, the moon's gravity is 1/6 of Earth, so you need to make it 6 times bigger. Is it how that works?
I mean, maybe the atmospheric pressure has inflated Rise a bit since it was last inside the Orion capsule. It's also grown legs.
Yeah.
and off it goes. I'm sorry. I've completely lost it. Marching off into the sunset.
We salute you, Rise.
Yes. Off Rise goes. Bye, Rise. Thanks for making the show much more entertaining than it was already. Can someone clip that? I'm very happy that I've been on this stream now. That has made this stream a million times better than it was. Oh dear. Okay, time to compose myself.
Core stage going into the VAB.
Yes.
If anybody cares.
Yeah, if anyone is interested in the core stage, it is partially inside the VAB right now, continuing to roll in. I'm not sure if they'll leave the door open or if they'll close the door after it is inside. But we do see that door open quite often. It's one of the primary ways that they get hardware in another UPS advert. It's one of the primary ways they get probably the same truck. It's one of the primary ways that they get that hardware in and out of the VAB. The door might look small in comparison to the rest of the building, but trust me, that's a very big door because the VAB is a very, very big building. Rastagon is asking if the next time the core leaves the VAB will be just before Artemis III, and that is the plan. It will leave the VAB vertical, stacked as an entire launch vehicle. If it leaves the VAB before that, I will be slightly concerned.
I'd be concerned if it left after Artemis 3.
Yeah.
Anytime before Artemis 3, then of course it should be when it's supposed to exit.
Going back to the Starship installation we were talking about, JS Webb is asking if we think the white tiles we've seen on one of the nose cones could be tiles they use on the storage variant.
Might be. One of the things that we saw. I don't know if people remember the HLS update that we got from SpaceX back in October or November, I think it was, of last year. They showed a picture of a white tile, and they were talking about it being for micrometeorite and orbital debris protection, so MMOD protection, as it's usually called. And so I really wonder if another sort of reason to install white tiles, apart from insulation, might also be just protection against micrometeorite or some kind of orbital debris or something like that. There's not a lot of orbital debris in the lunar environment, but you still have operations in low Earth orbit where there are many of those. And micrometeorites are much more common in the lunar vicinity. So yeah, you might need some of those protections. I don't know if you remember, but the more trucks passing by. But the Artemis II crew saw flashes from meteorite impacts on the moon as they were flying by the moon, by the sort of the shadow side of the moon, right? And they saw, I think, like a handful of them during their flyby each. So that's a lot of impacts.
Chad Isaacman jokingly saying that they might need to rethink their roofing plans for the moon base after they saw all of that MMOD.
Yeah, who knows?
Scott Manley did like a huge kind of maths post on X. I'll be honest, I didn't read through all of it because I couldn't understand most of it. But the conclusion, I believe, was that they might need a few feet of regolith on top of the roof just to kind of protect against the MMOD and other objects striking the surface of the moon.
Yeah, he sort of followed the train of thought of like, okay, they saw flashes from these impacts. How bright do they need to be for the distance and the sensitivity of the eye and things like that? Sort of working with, or it's sort of like an approximation, right? It's a very common thing, especially in physics. Of it's like, okay, I don't want to do the hard job of actually going through the very specific numbers, but I know at least the order of magnitude, like right? Like it's this big of a number, it's this big of a number, the other thing, and then this other thing, and now I divide this by the other, or I do a cube root or whatever, right? And then you do all of the different things, and then you get more or less like an idea of how big the result needs to be, and then you do the actual hard work and get down to. It's as if you were trying to approximate pi or something like that, and your approximation were 6, and it's like, okay, pi 6, not great unless you're an astronomer. Maybe pi being equal to 6 might be good. But if you're building, for example, the core stage here, pi being 6 will be horrible, right? But if you get 3.14, well, that's a lot closer, right, than the final one. Like that's sort of the thing here, where it's like, okay, you do an approximation first, and then you see the actual number if it's close. So he did that, and he came to the conclusion that the flashes that they saw were from meteorites that were like, they were not micro. They were like kilogram size, like few pounds, basically.
Yeah.
At the very least, micro, it's usually like grains of sand or a little bit bigger, like a few grams, basically. These are kilogram sized, so yeah, might need some heavy roofing. The very big benefit of the moon, though, is that you don't have asteroids or meteorites or whatever coming down from the surface, so you only need roof. You don't need protection all over, which is very nice. Otherwise, it would be would be a very weird place to have rocks coming down from the surface.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to try and manufacture a door capable of protecting against that while also being able to, ingress.
Yeah.
Speaking of ingress, the core stage is continuing to ingress the vehicle assembly building, almost fully inside at this point, which is great to see. Again, much quicker than the roll for the Artemis II core stage, but again, Artemis II core stage was much more complete than this core stage. This is just kind of the top 4/5 of the core stage. The actual engine section is already inside the VAB. It arrived a few years ago at this point, in the end of 2022, and it will then be welded together inside of the VAB, and then have its engines installed. Bit of a different process this time around and going forward than we've been used to with Artemis 1 and Artemis 2, where the entire core stage was completely finished off at the Michoud Assembly Facility in New Orleans in Louisiana. But this time around and going forward, they're still building it at Michoud, but they're just doing the final assembly at the VAB when they are kind of getting integrated. We've got a bit more support over the last few minutes. Thank you to Andrew for becoming a Capcom member. You now get access to our awesome member Discord in the background. But you get some behind the scenes stuff as well in there, which is pretty cool. And JS Webb has become a Power Trap member. Thank you for that. We have another question here. How many orbital or lunar missions do you think Blue Origin and SpaceX will have to conduct before Artemis III begins? I'm not sure about before Artemis III, but definitely before Artemis IV, I think they're going to have to do multiple uncrewed autonomous demonstrations of being able to not only get to the moon, but also land on the moon, because that's a big deal. Especially SpaceX, they're very all in on automation. Automation? That's what I meant to
say. Automation, yeah. I mean, before Artemis 3 happens, there's at least one of the Blue Moon Mark 1 landers that's going to be attempting a landing, right? The Endurance lander that Blue Origin is sort of putting together. Sort of final touches and final testing and whatnot. They still need to do a wet dress rehearsal at the pad of the lander. They still need to do a bunch of other testing as well. Yeah, and officially per Blue Origin, they were tracking that launch end of the summer of this year. And so, yeah, that's definitely at least going to happen before Artemis 3. I don't know about Starship. I think they have a less phased approach. They want to launch more of like closer to a final product, I guess, or I shouldn't say final product. I should say more like at least the propulsion side of things more closer to the end goal, right? I don't think the uncrewed landing of HLS will be carrying a cabin. I think it's just going to be like, engines and the lander thrusters and whatnot. And the landing legs and all that. I don't think that's going to happen before Artemis 3. It's definitely going to happen before Artemis 4, of course, as you mentioned, right? They're going to be doing the uncrewed landings. But we'll see.
We will see indeed. I think the core stage is pretty much inside the VAB at this point.
Yeah, getting rolled into the transfer aisle. Sort of the in between. I guess it's right in its name. It's a transfer aisle. It's
Yeah,
where
it's where they
these
transfer the
boosters,
things.
yeah, they come in, and that is where they turn this into vertical position. I wouldn't expect that until after they remove the engine section, the stand in that they have there, that it's slowly disappearing from view. Because remember, this thing needs to be installed on the other engine section, the real one, the flight one, that is on high bay one. And so I would expect that, this core stage is going to be, sorry, worked on for the next few days, maybe weeks. I don't really know how long it'll take until they actually put the tanks on the engine section, on the flight engine section. But it might be a little bit. And then once that happens, then they can start outfitting the core stage with all of the other little bits and bolts and whatnot. As I said before, it's missing a lot of for example, the liquid oxygen transfer line there. It's very much incomplete. The pressure lines that go up to each of the tanks to be able to pressurize them and also to drain them and like the excess hydrogen and things like that, for example. All those sorts of things will need to be applied and installed over the next many months once the tanks are connected to the engine section. I know somebody was asking, what's sort of the timeline. Right now, we don't have anything official from NASA, just based on previous timelines of how long it's taken previous core stages. I will suspect that probably end of the summer will be maybe when this core stage, especially if they sort of go in super fast mode, sort of thing, like Jared with a with a whip out there, sort of thing, right? And going fast and all that. I think maybe end of summer, beginning of fall. I can see the aft booster sections maybe placed on the mobile launcher in the summer as well. In preparation for stacking, I think stacking may not be until later this year, like, fall time frame. Maybe before Thanksgiving, I don't know. I think it might be around that time. Once again, because every single Artemis mission has been stacked around November timeframe, or at least has started stacking around November. Happened for Artemis 1 and then also for Artemis 2.
And speaking of Artemis 2, if you are still interested in picking up some items to commemorate that historic mission, the patch is sold out. The patch sold out a long time ago at this point, but the rest of our Artemis 2 collection is still available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com, and we have got things commemorating the entire mission from splashdown all the way to the incredible lunar flyby, which you can see there. We've also got a sticker sheet with everything on it, but there you go. We've got that awesome coffee Moonjoy mug, and we of course have the launch and pre-launch designs as well, which you can see there. You can get the patch on the shirts; those don't sell out, but the actual proper physical patch itself, that sold out a long while ago now, unfortunately. So you are a little bit too late on that one. And of course, we have many prints as well from the launch. It was a spectacular launch 28 days ago from Launch Complex 39B. I have to scroll down a little bit. We've got a lot of stuff in the shop. Almost there.
Yeah.
Almost there. There we
I'm
go.
wearing today the Artemis 2 patch shirt. I will show it to you, but we're not on screen right now. We're not like on camera or anything. Also, don't be like me and don't drop peach juice on your shirt.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
But there you go. Plenty of pretty pictures you can put on your wall if you so wish of the Space Launch System, in addition to all the other things we have on the shop. And as you can see, the secret shop is still open for another 3 hours and 9 minutes. So if you want to get a scrub shirt, now is your chance. Falcon Heavy doesn't scrub that often. So you have 3 hours, 9 minutes, and 40 seconds to pick. I watched the whole stream and all I got was a Falcon Heavy scrub. This is from yesterday's stream, by the way. Today, I watched this whole stream and all I got was Rise dancing on camera. And I'm very happy about that. With that, Alex, thank you so much for joining us this morning as we watch this core stage roll into the VAB.
Yeah, we need to talk to the store team and see if we can do that. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's been a nice morning, and hopefully we get to see that Falcon Heavy tomorrow. Of course, we're gonna be live for that, and yeah, many more things as well for SLS coming very soon. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned indeed. Thank you to Jerry and Max who were in the field bringing you these live views. And of course the robots as well. We keep them well fed, bringing you 24/7 views over on Space Coast Live, which is a round-the-clock live stream of everything that happens at the Kennedy Space Center and Port Canaveral, where we see the boosters come in after landing. And of course, thank you to Jay Keegan for pushing the buttons and operating today's live stream. That's it for this particular part of the Artemis III Core Stage's journey, but there's plenty more stacking to come. Artemis III coming up next year. But in the more shorter time frame, things are going to be getting a little bit heavy. See you tomorrow, everyone.
And here we go.
There's the deluge. Here's ignition.
Doubling up.
Did it just do a Kerbal?
Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, you know.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, it sure looks like a perfect world.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation. 343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers fly!
Bingo! Right in the center. Where's Jacqueline? There it is!
That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my god.
Yikes, you bet. We don't need any more of these.